2009, Council began research and consultation to identify the key challenges in sport for women and girls within Moreland.
The review identified several issues.
There was a serious lack of female competition and teams.
Only 8% of participants using council sports grounds were female.
To address this inequality, Council introduced a policy to encourage clubs to be more inclusive of women, juniors, people with a disability and people from culturally diverse communities, or risk losing an allocation of a ground to a club that is being inclusive.
Female participation has now increased by 161% in Moreland.
West Merri-bek Football Club is proud to align with Moreland's policy.
This year we successfully launched the club's first ever under-12 girls footy team.
We're changing our club.
We're changing our culture.
I'm changing the game.
So I'm Claire Johnston and I'm an accredited cricket bat maker and the first female in the world. I learnt how to make cricket bats from Ian Cullen. There's a lot of bats out there for men and I felt that there was an opportunity there to actually work with women to make better bats and to actually make them for their style. So recently I was commissioned to make 5 cricket bats for the Pascoe Vale Headfield Cricket Club for their under-13s girls cricket team. And yeah, to see their faces when they were given the cricket bats was just brilliant. So what I'd really love to be able to do is to keep working with my local community, the local cricket clubs, particularly the women, and yeah, work to make great cricket bats.
My name is Michael Tortoni. I'm the founder of Melbourne's legendary jazz club, Bennett's Lane. I've recently moved to the very cool Brunswick. The Jazz Lab here on Leslie Street, Brunswick is Melbourne's new home of jazz. In my old club, you might have seen Prince for a late night set, or the Wynton Marsalis Band, or even the Harry Connick Jr. Trio. My new club will also host stars of contemporary music, starting with the Bill Frisell Trio for the Melbourne International Jazz Festival, as well as local stars. So drop in for some great music and a drink at the Jazz Lab.
My name's Leslie. I have been with Moreland Family Daycare as an educator for over 36 years, I think. Family Daycare is a wonderful organisation. We look after children in our own home, they blend in with the family and it's fantastic.
I love Family Daycare.
I can choose my own hours, very flexible. I've made wonderful friendships with lots of the families. I'm now looking after children of the children I used to care for. The children just growing and developing is a wonderful experience for me every day. I'd recommend Family Daycare to anybody and everybody. Oh, where's my Scouty snuggle? Where's my Scouty snuggle? Can I have a Scouty snuggle? How's your tea party going?
My name's Hilary. I've been with Moreland Family Daycare for 8 months now and I absolutely love it. The main reason I started with Family Daycare was to be with my little one. Family Daycare is a small environment, so mostly I only have 4 children and it's in a home. Moreland have been really supportive of the whole thing and they helped me find children when I first started. There's so many benefits of working Family Daycare and becoming an educator. Working in your own home, flexible hours, also just watching the other children grow and being such a part of their life. I recommend to educators that want a good life balance if they have their own child. Family Daycare is a great avenue to go down.
Hey Moreland, today I'm down in St Kilda for the Midsummer Pride March supporting the LGBTQ community. It's a beautiful day. I'm proud to be here representing Moreland, walking behind so many wonderful dedicated people. This march goes towards
Well, good evening, councillors, members of the gallery and our viewers live streaming tonight's meeting. My name's John Kavanagh and I'm the Mayor of the City of Moreland. It's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's council meeting. Our meeting is being held on the traditional land of the Wurundjeri people and I wish to acknowledge them as the traditional owners. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and elders from other communities who may be here this evening. I acknowledge that currently many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have made Moreland home and in doing so have contributed to the positive, rich diversity of this municipality. Members of the gallery, please note that this council meeting is being recorded and web streamed live to council's website and Facebook. This recording will also be available as video on demand. Gallery attendees are advised that they will be recorded during the meeting. Councillors, just a reminder that in line with the adopted Councillor Conduct Principles as outlined in the Councillor Code of Conduct, councillors should ensure that they conduct themselves in this meeting with integrity, impartially exercise their responsibilities in the interests of the local community and not improperly seek or confer or advantage any person. This behaviour will support the principles of leadership and good governance and secures public confidence in the office of councillor. I'd like to introduce the other councillors in tonight's attendance. We have Councillor Sue Bolton, Councillor Anna-Olivia Carley-Hannon, Councillor Helen Davidson, Councillor Jess Dorney, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Natalie Abood, Councillor Alia Farnley, Councillor Dale Martin, Councillor Mark Riley, Councillor Lambros Tapanos and Councillor Oscar Yildiz. And the officers in attendance, starting to my left, the Chief Executive Officer, Dr Norina De Lorenzo, and then from my far right we have Grant Thorne, the Director of City Infrastructure, Arden Joseph, the Director of Social Development, Kirsten Costa, Director of Planning and Economic Development. And to my left we have Liz Rowland, who's the Acting Director of Corporate Services. We have Olivia Wright, the Manager of Property and Governance, and we have Anita Craven, who's the Executive Manager of Organisational Development. So we move to apologies, and I think we have everyone here. So I'd note, councillors, that Councillor Dorney has requested leave of absence from the 22nd of August to the 19th of September 2008 inclusive, and Councillor Abood has requested leave of absence from the 6th to the 14th of July 2018 inclusive. Could I have a motion, councillors, to grant leave of absence to both Councillor Dorney and Councillor Abood? Moved by Councillor Riley, seconded by Councillor Farnley. Any discussion on that? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Disclosure of interests and conflicts of interest. Councillors, are there any interests or conflicts of interest to declare? Councillor Abood.
Yes, I would like to declare a conflict of interest to the notice of motion regarding the Northern Legal Service. I have a conflict by direct association. My first cousin works there.
Okay, thank you. At that point, we'll ask you to leave the council chambers for that item. Are there any other declarations of interest for tonight's meeting? There being no other, we'll move on. Councillors, could I have a motion for the adoption of the minutes for the meeting held on the 9th of May 2018? Councillor Yildiz is moving that. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Riley. Any discussion on the minutes? Being no discussion, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Councillors, we've received a petition 1018, request to reinstate a lamp adjacent to 16 Mullard Road in Brunswick to illuminate the right-of-way laneway.
I have that petition, Mr. Mayor.
You have another, yeah?
And I'd just like to note that there are 60 petitioners, so I'll move that. Okay,
thank you. And in the course of the procedure that we have for receiving petitions. All right, thank you very much, Councillor Tapanos. So moved by Councillor Tapanos. Do I have a seconder for receiving that petition? Councillor Yildiz. Any discussion on that? Right, so just to be clear, councillors, when we put that forward, we're voting just to receive the petition. No decision has been made on the contents of that petition yet. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour of receiving the petition? Against? Declare that carried.
You may want to ask if there's any petitions.
Yes, I'm about to ask, yep. Now, councillors, do we have any other petitions that have been tabled to you on behalf of the residents? Okay. Do we have anyone in the public gallery that would like to table a petition tonight? No. Okay. Good, so there being none, we'll move on to the next item. Reports from Committee and Council. It still has that, but they're incorporated in the governance report tonight. So we move on to question time, and this is an opportunity for 30 minutes for the citizens of Moreland to raise questions with councillors. I'd like to outline the process. Please note that if your question relates to a matter on the council officer's report, or in fact notice of motion, this is the time to raise it with us. Questions can be submitted online also prior to the meeting. A maximum of 2 questions is allowed per person, and a maximum of 3 questions will be heard on any one subject. Council will then proceed to the next subject, returning to the previous subject if time allows. If your question cannot be answered, it will be taken on notice and responded to between now and the next council meeting. If a response to your question is provided at tonight's meeting, there will be no further formal response. However, Council will action any commitments it makes in answering the question. We have 30 minutes. We'll make sure we get through as many questions as possible, and so I'll ask that we don't enter into debate this time, and you'll be given time to inform Council of the context of your question, but to get to your question as quickly as possible. Also, councillors only be accepting an answer to the question from either one councillor or one officer, and we should direct our answers succinctly. So the commencement time by that clock is 7:04 p.m, and we begin with Helen McDonald, please.
Hello, councillors, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm here to talk about the Merri Creek Bridge tonight, which I know is on your agenda, and I'm very excited to see it there. It's a much wanted report from myself, who's here tonight on behalf of the Merri Creek Bridge Group. So we're a community group. Our campaign started about 11 years ago in Darebin, lobbying for a new bridge over the Merri Creek just near Ceres. So this is to connect Northcote and East Brunswick communities specifically with a safe walking and cycling route. Why the report you're seeing tonight has got details of the feasibility report and all the work and the design work that's happened so far. What's missing from that report is the why and the passion behind this. I've been working on this campaign for 5 years, and it stems from safety concerns. The existing road bridges that people need to use to cross the Merri Creek are unsafe for pedestrians and cyclists. So we did a survey a couple of years ago. We know that there's been a number of near misses which don't get recorded on collision statistics, and that people have deep concerns about safety. My own safety concerns stem from school children. I have 3 of them who need to cross from Northcote to East Brunswick every day to attend our local primary school, for which we are zoned. So we live in Northcote, we're zoned to East Brunswick Primary School. So this campaign stemmed from safety concerns, but it's also, if you can't provide a safe crossing, creek crossing, many people just choose to use their cars instead. They don't feel safe on bikes. As I said, there's been a number of near misses. People want a safer way to get across the creek. So my question is, yes. I'm wondering, what positive impact do you think will come from this new bridge being built?
I'm happy for any councillor to answer that question. Councillor Bolton.
Well, I was involved in some discussions with your group a few years ago now, and as well as parents in the Northcote area being zoned to East Brunswick Primary School, I'm also aware that kids in Brunswick are zoned to the Northcote High School, and also there's a special school in Croxton Street, which their kids from the Brunswick side go to that school. So I am very well aware of a lot of the safety issues that people have raised with me. So there's, because of school zoning, there's a lot of necessity for people to cross the bridge, and I mean, traffic's also increasing, as we all know. So, I mean, I certainly think at least some, or I'd hope most, or all councillors are very aware of that issue. But I think, you know, I think also because the bridge at Moreland Road there is at the bottom of a hill, it also means the cars are also flying when they come down. So it's not a good situation at all for kids, parents, you know, people who are a bit frail or just people who are daydreaming. So I certainly think this is a really important project, and so far I think most councillors are sort of very aware, but I hope.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your question. Thanks, Councillor Bolton. Jessica Telsma.
Good evening, councillors. I'm Jessica Tolsma. I'm active president of the Sydney Road Association and a business owner on Sydney Road in Brunswick. The SRBA has been successfully marketing Sydney Road for 25 years. We enjoy a fabulous relationship with Hayley, Will and many other staff at Moreland City Council. The association works on projects with the MCC such as the Anstey Village Festival, several mural projects, the Retail Revitalisation Project and many more. We also actively promote Sydney Road using a variety of mediums such as television, radio, online and print media, as well as running community events such as the Riders Comp, Art on the Spot and the Short Film Competition, just to name a few. Where I'm up to. Can we count on the councillors' continued support of the SRBA and the renewal of the special levy rate?
No worries. I might take that. I know you can go.
I'm happy to do that. I turned up here and sat on the committee to hear about this special rate, and unfortunately no one arrived to actually defend it or to put it down. But I'm more than happy to support the special rate. I think the work that the association does and things that you just mentioned, like the art exhibition coming up, are all very worthwhile, and they actually complement the community and the work that we're doing in our city at a social level, at an economic level, and in so many other ways. So more than happy to continue to support it, and any other, and our other associations that do similar work in other parts of the city, because it's about a partnership, and I think that's an excellent way to proceed. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
And thank you for volunteering on being president, etc., when you've got your business as well. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. Serena O'Malley.
Hello, Mayor and Councillors.
Hello, how is
my name's Serena O'Mealy. I'm from an adjoining municipality at Darebin, and my question is in relation to the land adjoining the Merri Creek in Fawkner.
Yes.
That's on the agenda tonight. So the first question is, has Moreland Council made a starting offer for environmentally significant land at 1 to 17 Leonard Street and 154 to 156 McBride Street, Fawkner, to prevent the land from ending up in the state government's fast-track land disposal process? And if not, what is the deadline for making an offer?
Okay, and I might take the second one and we'll answer them both together.
When will Moreland Council release the currently confidential council report on the proposal to purchase the land at Leonard and McBride Streets, Fawkner?
Okay. All right, so we have until the end of June to make a decision on that, and it is tonight in a confidential item, as you've mentioned in the second part. We won't be releasing the confidential report, but when the matter reaches its conclusion, we will publicise the outcome of that conclusion, okay, and we give you some indication as to whether council is making an offer or not.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
You can.
Similar items have come in front of Darebin Council in the past, and they have made their reports public. Is there a reason why Moreland doesn't make their reports public?
Well, because we're going to be in if we choose to make an offer, we'll be in a negotiation with the state government, and we don't want to flag the amount that we're offering.
Would you do it minus the amount?
Yes, we'll give you an indication as to whether we're making an offer. We will do that.
Thank you.
Yes, we will do that, as we did with Outlook and with McBride, the other McBride. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for the question, Serena. Nick Dolby.
Yeah, Nick Dolby, West Brunswick. Two questions. First one is on the aquatic strategy. I'm very pleased to see the motion in the aquatic strategy maintaining 6 public local swimming pools in Moreland. It means that local communities can not only walk to their local pool, but they become focuses of community activities. And I'm wondering if that was one of the factors that influenced Council's decision. First question. Yeah, that was a sucky one, wasn't it? Okay, second one, not so much. Wheatsheaf Road's coming up. Yes, Wheatsheaf Road, do it. The multi-purpose site there. But the Glenroy structure plan hasn't been put together. Now, Glenroy at the moment, the main shopping strip, has got a sewer a sewer running through it called Pascoe Vale Road. It's a traffic sewer. Try walking from one side of Pascoe Vale Road to the other. Is the Glenroy Structure Plan going to be looking at revitalising the whole of the Glenroy Activity Centre, particularly the area to the east of the railway line?
Okay. Well, thank you for your comments on the first one, and I think that is one of the things that's front and centre of Council's mind about that. On the second, we do have a Glenroy Structure Plan from 2008 from memory, I think it was, right? And, you know, it's true that it's been slower on the uptake than in other areas in the structure plan, such as Brunswick and Coburg, but it's certainly in place. Obviously, key to that structure plan is the removal of the level crossing. That's key. I understand your concerns about Pascoe Vale Road as well. I'm hearing that. I don't know if I'll describe it as a sewer, but I understand where you're coming from as far as traffic management goes. Yeah, so I hear what you're saying, but we definitely do have a Glenroy structure plan, and I'm happy to send it to you if you like.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Maureen McCanny.
Good evening, councillors.
Good evening, Maureen.
I believe that this evening there's the request by the John Faulkner Hospital to extend working hours on the 6th and 7th of July. I'm pretty confident you all know the history. There's noise that has been ongoing before and after permit hours since they started the build on the 14th of February last year. The residents are tired and grumpy, and it's intolerable that they be allowed to do so when there are options. In the construction management plan, I'm going back on memory. I haven't had a chance to find it because I only found out about it in the last couple of days that that this matter was coming to you. But my recollection is that stakeholders were required to be notified of any changes to times. And we were considered stakeholders during the permit application, during the appeal process. And so we do not expect that that has changed, and we don't understand why we were not formally notified. That's just a point. I'm not asking you to answer that other than to look into it if you wouldn't mind. Their permit is currently from 7 till 6, yet they start before 7 and they finish early, usually between 3 and 4 most days. They have a tradie day off every 2 weeks, and when there's a public holiday, as per this week, they take the Tuesday off too. So in 2012 and 2015, the John Faulkner submitted a Cardno report, and both show, and I think this excuse has been used in the past, that they need to do this work on a Saturday and Sunday because they have surgery. In fact, if you have a look at the Cardno report, there are staff numbers, and in surgery they have people working on Saturdays and Sundays. So you have been misled again. Our request is that at the time, my understanding as well is that there are issues with the integrity of the existing old hospital, and that it's going to be difficult to do a join with the new hospital, and that there's a very likely chance that they're going to have to evacuate the hospital to be able to do that. Now, if that's the case, why can't they do these works at that time? Why can't they do the works on by working longer hours, do them on a Monday on their day off, and extend it if they need to, as they've said in their request, into the Tuesday, which would mean only one, half a day or 1 day into their normal days. I have just a sample of photos taken in the last month that I'd like to show you of trucks before 7 a.m. They're only samples. I can hand them round.
That's right.
But in addition to that, there is also the situation where we had a delivery done at 9:45 at night, and the next morning they were there before 7 a.m.
All right, Maureen, we've hit over the 3 minute mark, so He's recording it on his laptop. All right, just to answer part of the question, and then I'll get the director to do the other. Yes, look, one of the things, we are aware of the public interest in this, and so that's why it needs to come before a council or a UPC meeting. It was requested to come to the last UPC meeting, but we've asked it to come before the full council, because otherwise it wouldn't have been on the agenda and you wouldn't have had an opportunity to speak, and we think that's important that you're informed of that. Regarding the breach of the allegations that they're breaching their current permit, I'll move to the director on that.
Through the Mayor, the allegations around not a breach of permit, I understand you're talking about the trucks and the delivery of the materials to the site.
I'm talking about before hours. We're getting almost, well, definitely weekly, sometimes 3, 4, 5 days a week, we are getting trucks arriving before 7 a.m. Police have been called on a number of occasions because nobody from council responds to after hours and does anything about it, nor can they get there in time to actually see the breach to be able to do anything about it. We now have video footage and surveillance that we would be happy to share with council if you were to do something about it and issue pins. Because it's date and time stamped.
All right, thank you, Maureen. Okay.
So certainly. So movements on the street, there's a public space and they can actually move in the street. The concern is whether they're constructing on the site, which is something that we would have to look into. In terms of the accusation around whether they need to do the works on the Saturdays or Sundays, that's actually in relation to the patients in the building, not the tradies and their hours of operation. So our understanding is that that's when they're not doing surgery and it's the least impact on patients in the hospital.
So you weren't listening to what I said, that in the Cardno report times 2, 2012, 2015, they actually do surgery on weekends.
Right. No, thank you, Maureen. Thank you very much, and thanks for your continued interest.
Thank you.
Larry DeCata.
Good evening, councillors.
Good evening, Larry. How are you?
Good. Good. At the last UPC meeting, council adopted the Champ Street Streetscapes Improvement Plan without changes. My two questions relate to the spotted gum currently situated in front of Road D, which is slated for removal at some future date. Firstly, I'd like to bring to your attention the fact that very large and very long B double trucks have no problem getting in and out of the Road D interface with Champ Street, despite the tree being in front. And at peak times, these trucks are either entering or exiting the site every 1.5 minutes. The opening in the wall and the existing crossover are all wide enough for this kind of entry. In light of this, is there any new information relating to negotiations between Council's Traffic Department and the developer of the Pentridge site? I believe that alternative designs such as a traffic island in front of Road D allowing retention of the tree were being discussed. And secondly, has a study been completed that would identify the exact cost to Council of relocating the underground services to allow a traffic island to be built, or even keeping the current road configuration, which appears ample?
Okay, thank you very much, Larry, for the succinctness of the question. I think I might go to the Director of City Infrastructure on that one.
Through the Mayor, thank you for the question, Larry. My recollection, there was some work done some time ago on the service relocations and the layout of of that area, if you like, including the tree and the exit. And my understanding is, going back a step, the streetscape concept plan that was approved at UPC in May, although it notes the removal of the tree, it's actually also separate to the planning permit that is for the removal of the tree. My understanding is even that the Shahir Group still wish to proceed with the planning permit that they have. So that previous information about relocations and alternative designs, some of it was not possible, but some of it's not been accepted as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Larry, and thanks for your interest in the area. And Karina.
Hi.
Good evening.
All right, so I attended the council meeting last time and I asked two questions regarding public amenity in Coburg. One of my questions was taken on notice, which is fair enough if you don't have the information to hand, so that's fine. And I note the response in the brick of an agenda.
Right, okay, yes. That's fair.
So that's fair enough, but you didn't actually answer my other question.
Okay, and which one was that, Karina? So we can...
So I'm going to repeat
Fine.
both questions so that people know. Grant Thorne only answered a small part of my first question.
Okay.
And so here I am again, and hopefully I won't have to keep coming back. I'd like a full answer. All right, so after 4 years of sustained community pressure and an ongoing stream of petition signatures, in June of last year, Council finally voted to build 3 new public toilets in central Coburg. This was to be built as a block in Victoria Street Mall to replace, supposedly, the widely disliked, regularly filthy and supposedly automated Exelou toilets, of which there are only 2, which, in spite of all their flaws, were still being used well in excess of council benchmarks for public toilet usage, indicating a clear need for more public toilets in this area. Council seems to have taken a great deal of time to take on board community and trader views of this situation. However, you finally did vote to build that new block in June of last year. A letter went out to residents and traders to notify everyone of the new building works, which were to be completed by the end of June this year. It's now mid-June. A barrier has gone up in the area and some foundational work appears to have been completed, and that's it. Accordingly, here are my 2 questions again. 1, given that council has a surplus of millions of dollars in the budget, and given that you can build things pretty quickly when you want to, who decided that it was fair or even appropriate to take an entire year to build these new toilets, which are so necessary for public amenity, safety and hygiene? And is anything else at all being done to alleviate this situation whatsoever? I took out the part that Grant did actually answer.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you.
And my second question, which was on notice, which I'll repeat for the gallery and for the viewers.
Yep.
Number 2, why earlier this year did a situation arise in which one of the only 2 Exelou toilets supposedly servicing the entire population of central Coburg, why was that out of action for at least 2 weeks? Why wasn't that dealt with earlier? And how is it fair or appropriate that the community is subjected to such a lack of amenity for surely to have 1 toilet for the entire thousands of people in central Coburg? Surely that's just completely ridiculous.
Thank you
So
very
there
much.
you go.
Thank you for coming back. The Director, would you like to answer this?
Through the Mayor, thank you for your question. In answering the second question first, as you noted, the response is in the agenda, so I won't repeat the response that is in the agenda about why the toilet was closed for a period of 2 and a bit weeks. In regards to the first question about why it takes a year to build a toilet, Council resolved as part of the budget to allocate the funding. There was then a design done. It is a different toilet to our normal toilet to fit in with the Coburg theme. There are then the necessary approvals from the various authorities to be gained, and then a contract to be let, and then the toilet built. And the toilet is now currently being installed. As you noted, there are works and foundation works that are commenced, and the toilet will continue to be built, along with the many other toilets that Council has installed across the municipality this year.
Okay, thank you, Grant.
That's not actually answering the second part.
All right, then.
Is anything else being done to address this situation? How many times do I have to ask the same thing? I mean, really, it's rude.
Would you like to expand, Grant?
I will expand, and I can't recall the details off the top of my head, but in the previous reports that have been provided in this chamber, there are many toilets within Coburg, both within the various restaurants and facilities within Coburg, as well as the public Exelous. The current public toilets that are provided are the same number that have been there, so Council hasn't removed any toilets. And by Council building the new toilet, there are additional facilities being built, and once those new 3 cubicles are built, the existing Exelou on the north west corner will be relocated to the east side of Sydney
I
Road.
said, has anything else happened besides this 12 o'clock?
I do think he's answered the question for you, so we're going to leave it there now.
That's my question, which you haven't answered.
Thank you. All right, we're going to, in my view, I think the question is answered now. So, on notice items from previous council meeting, which was from your question, could I have a motion, councillors, to receive the sorry, that concludes question time. That's the end of our questions for tonight. Meant to say, so could I have a motion to receive the on notice item report?
I think there's someone missing from the, might have dropped off the question.
All right then, okay, I'll take it, sorry, yep.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all councillors for acknowledging my petition for the block Howler, Grantham, Millwood and Union Street.
Yes. Can I just clarify that? At the moment, council has accepted the petition. That doesn't mean that that's all we've done at this point. We haven't said that the light is going to be replaced at this point, just to clarify. That's what, okay, so just...
But I'd like to make it clear with you with some of the photos that I've taken.
Thank you, sir. That's good.
And I'm trying to raise those issues because at the end of the day, I don't think it's safe. First of all, there's a gap left behind after you removed the off-street lighting.
Right, okay.
Number two, there's a community housing where authority delivered patients to the back of the housing, and they use a van that parks in Millward Street. Now, here's a photo of the patient.
Thank you. Yeah.
Van there. And the next one, there's lots of graffitis on the walls,
So, in essence, you think the light should be replaced, and these are your reasons why. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yes. Have you got anything else more to say, sir, or just we're happy to have a look at all the photos?
These are for my neighbours.
Yes.
There's something that is for my mum.
Yes.
We've got some dents on the fence of our house in 16A. And they are at the car door level, so it's definitely damaged by driving cars.
Right. Okay. All right. I think we've got the picture there. I'm going to go to Councillor Bolton and see if happy to ask a question.
If you don't mind. Thanks, Chris. Just before the meeting, you sort of mentioned to me an extra reason why it would be good to have this light replaced. So not only just for your personal situation, but also because of patients being dropped off in that area. Yeah. Is that are there a lot of patients? Like a lot of patients transported there?
Well, I think there are around between 5 to 10 patients that they delivered. They sometimes deliver during the day, sometimes at night time. Whenever they come across, there's always noise. So you'll get to know them.
I think that could be extra information if this area is it's unsafe for walking if there's lack of light and there are patients being dropped off in that area. So that's useful information. Thanks.
All right. No, thank you, Chris. We're just going to go to Councillor
just very quickly,
Tapanos, and then we're going to finish.
Because I do know that there is a number of other smaller amenity issues in regards to the light. Can I perhaps recommend that perhaps a council officer meet on site with the residents and go through some of these issues and then report back to councillors?
You can suggest that. It's okay. Yes.
So just through the Mayor, we'll take on your suggestion. We've got the petition. I know there's been some responses in the past. We'll seek to understand if there's anything else that we need to unpack better.
All right. Thank you.
No centre for cousins. Thank you.
Sorry, what's that? No. I don't know. Okay, no worries. Okay, on notice items from now in May the 2018 council meeting, could I have a motion to receive the on notice item report from the council meeting the 9th of May 2018? Moved by Councillor Abood, seconded by Councillor Riley. I'll put that to vote. All those in favour? Against, declare that carried. Reports by Mayor and Councillors. Reports by Mayor and Councillors provide an opportunity for councillors to report on activities in relation to events, activities, meetings and other functions that councillors have attended during the council meetings. All reports of Mayor and Councillors will appear in the minutes of the meeting. I'd like to ask each councillor in turn if they wish to provide a report. I'll start from over here. Councillor Yildiz, Councillor Tapanos.
Not so much a report, but I did want to bring to Council's notice that I have received a donation on behalf of Council from a resident called Joseph Obeid in Brunswick, and it's a Federation of Australia medal. So these were issued by the town of Brunswick to celebrate the Federation of the Australian Commonwealth over 100 years ago. So I will hand that over to you, Mr Mayor, and I hope that it could be displayed in the council prominently. And I'd like to acknowledge and thank Joseph for his donation.
I don't want to lose it. Yes, thank you very much. Well, mate, if you have the details of Joseph, I'll be writing to him to thank him for his donation. Thank you. Councillor Riley?
Yes, just quickly, just as I mentioned earlier, that the Sydney Road Traders Association have an Arts on Windows event on the 30th of June between 10:30 and 4:30. It's just a one-off event, so if people are interested, people can go and take an interest in the artists doing their work, but artists are also encouraged to get involved, so I'm sure you can find that at their website or probably via the council website as well. And just to alert people to the fact that it's Refugee Week is coming up in June, in the next week or two. So just to alert people to that, and there is an event at Brunswick Town Hall. I'm just getting the details on the Saturday afternoon, which is Saturday the 23rd, and it's from around 1 o'clock. So I'd just encourage people to come to that. It's a continuation of last week's theme of where have we come to. So I encourage people to get involved in that too.
Thank you. Councillor Martin?
Yes, just really briefly, just two plugs. So firstly, on June the 23rd, Methil are holding their annual Zero Carbon Community Ideas Exchange at Fawkner Bowls Club. So anyone in the community that's really interested in moving towards a zero carbon future, such as many of the council are here, where we're really looking to generate as many ideas as we can. We have a 2040 zero carbon strategy that we're working on, and so this will flow into that. So I really do encourage anyone that's interested in that stuff, has ideas in that space, to really come and get involved in that. That's going to be at the Fawkner Bowls Club. And also a plug for our Bismorland events tomorrow night, talking about food waste in the community. And so that's available on Eventbrite as well. So if anyone's interested, please come along to that event also.
Thank you. Councillor McFarlane?
It's the FIFA World Cup on this month, and I did read that, I think it was a modern leader, might have been from Josh, but Andrew Naboo will be leading the Socceroos line. He's a Coburg boy, born and bred in Coburg, so it's quite impressive to see him taking on the big guys against France on Saturday. So hopefully all our Moreland residents can tune in and wish local Moreland boy Andrew Naboo on all the best, and continues to show how important it is for us to invest in our local sporting infrastructure to make sure that we foster the next generation of Andrew Naboo. So congratulations to him and all the best.
My son will be at the middle game in Russia. He's going to the second game, so he'll be cheering him on in person.
Yeah, I just have some grim news. As one of the two councillors responsible for women in the city, I would like to issue a warning to women that once again we're not safe on the streets. So the police have told us to look after our public safety, which is a horrible warning to have to be given. But I think it's just something that we're going to have to take on board, because there have been some horrible attacks and a death in the recent months and weekend, and an image has been released of a person that the police would like to speak to, but I think a bit of due diligence is probably a good idea, and there are lots of happy things happening in the city as well, but I can't think of them at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Bird. Councillor Dorney.
Just building on Dale's, Councillor Martin's notice of the Zero Carbon event that's happening at Fawkner Bowls Club on the 23rd of June from 10 till 12, which will be followed by lunch. They're going to be actually launching a community grants program for community members interested in driving action around addressing climate change. So that's an exciting launch and just a little addition to the plug of the event. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Dorney. Councillor Davidson?
Coming up in Glenroy on the 12th of August is the traditional Wurundjeri Week Games Day. So I would encourage anyone who wants to go down and participate in some traditional Aboriginal activities for this Games Week to please go down to the ATC Cook Reserve in Glenroy. You can throw a boomerang and throw a spear, and it's a wonderful day where lots of children and adults get to have a lot of fun and learn about our history.
Councillor Carly Hannon?
Myself and Councillor Wood are responsible for youth. Next Thursday is going to be a youth summit at Oxygen Youth Centre.
Excellent. And Councillor Bolton?
And one other local community event, since probably about 18 months ago now, or maybe 2 years ago, there's been a campaign for pedestrian safety on Nicholson Street and to have a safe pedestrian crossing at the Moore Street intersection with Nicholson Street, Coburg, and also for lower speed limit along Nicholson Street. There have been constant accidents, and of course, you know, peak time for the soccer club, there are massive numbers of people crossing that road. I mean, people don't usually walk to the lights. Some people do, but most people don't. They take the shortcut. And also, you know, at the time that the mosque is coming out, there are masses of people crossing that road. And there have been ongoing, quite frequent accidents of different levels of seriousness. So there's going to be a meeting of residents on, I think it's the 26th of June from memory, at the East Coburg Neighbourhood House, to try and get a bit of a report back of what's happening with complying with their demands for pedestrian safety. I mean, a lot of it is in Vic Road's hands. I mean, council has taken some action. Unfortunately, being a Vic Road's road, it means council can't just unilaterally do what it wants. But certainly, I think this is quite scary at peak times. Both for, you know, for all sorts of people darting over to the IGA, but especially for the soccer club and people coming out of the mosque. That's when massive numbers are crossing there.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Just one from me. Congratulate the Moreland residents who were honoured in their Queen's Birthday Honours list. I know that one of them was Dr. Terry Ahern, who used to practice in Bell Street and was actually my late mother's doctor, or whose father was also a doctor in Bell Street, Coburg. And I know there's another one in Moreland that just escapes my mind. I will write to them to congratulate them on behalf of the city. There's also Shirley from the ballet school. That's right, Shirley, that's right, from the ballet school. That's right, in Anderson Road. Thank you, Councillor, that's great. That's the one that's, and also Councillors, Yarra Councillor Jackie Pistacchi was also honoured with an AO as well for services to local government. Many of us would know Jackie. She's been a councillor for 18 years at Yarra and been involved in many transport metropolitan forums, etc. So congratulations to her, and we'll write to them and write to the Moreland ones and congratulate them. All right, thank you, councillors. Presentation of officer reports. So the first report we have to consider is DSD 1318, Council Action Plan Item, Adoption of Aquatic and Leisure Strategy 2018 to 2038. And Councillor Abood, you're on your feet, and would you like to move? And
Yes, I'd love to move the officer recommendation regarding this report.
did you want to move with a slight change with the minutes? No? No? Okay, just the officer report. Vote. Okay, that's moved by Councillor Abood and seconded by Councillor Tapanos. Okay. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Abood?
Yes. This has been a huge body of work. It's, as you know, Mr. Dolby said from the gallery, we didn't realise it was a burden when we inherited these 6 pools, but it's quite a big task, and we're quite lucky to have this problem. I want to admit that when I started having tours of the pools, I had great ideas in mind, like a natural pool like they have in Germany, except for the bit where we would have to rewrite the legislation about water and waterways and the interaction between the two things. And I had these great delusions of grandeur about what we could do with one of the 6 pools. And I don't know if it would have cost quite as much as Oak Park, but would certainly cost a whole lot of money. And even though there are some qualms about this report and it's not pleasing everyone, I think on the whole it's a great document and a successful body of work. And I have no qualms personally about putting the officer recommendation that we adopt this strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. Councillor Tapanos, would you like to speak to us a second?
I also echo the sentiments by Councillor Abood and like to also thank everyone who's participated in the consultation and provided feedback in regards to the strategy. So there is no doubt that pools are expensive, but they are very much valued in our community. So we are making a commitment to all of the pools that we currently operate, and that's important to be stated. But as you will notice in the report, we do have priorities and we do have certain sums of money that we are hoping to raise and allocate over the next few years. So there are projects at Fawkner in short term and of course projects and plans for Coburg into the future. So it is a large investment by council, but I know how much pools are valued in our municipality. I know from seeing the great work that's happened a few years ago now in Brunswick Baths and seeing how popular that facility is. I'm looking forward to Oak Park opening over the next summer, and it's money well spent. So, I'm really happy to see this work done.
Thank you. Any councillors want to speak against the strategy? No. Any other councillors?
I've got a foreshadow.
Okay. Would you like? Okay.
I also think this is a very good piece of work to really look in detail at who's using the pools, who's using the gyms. Who's using the leisure centres, what percentage of people are driving to particular facilities or walking or cycling, etc., to particular facilities. And I think there's a lot of good work which has gone into this, but I would rather see us compare two possible options. At the moment, what's being proposed in this report is for a very large amount of money, something in the order of $46 million to be spent not immediately, not in the next 5 years, but on the Coburg Leisure Centre. Now, obviously, the Coburg Leisure Centre needs upgrading, etc. But the perspective put forward in the report is for the Coburg Leisure Centre to be turned into a major sports facility, and that may very well be the best outcome. But from looking at the figures in the report, it really indicates that Coburg Leisure Centre at the moment, similarly to a lot of the other pools, it has a very much local people who tend to go to the pool. Probably of all of the pools, Coburg is the one that, I think from memory, the figures said something like 81% of people drive to Coburg, whereas a very high proportion of people tend to walk or cycle to the local pools. And I sort of feel as if there's not a sufficient case being put in this document for Coburg to have such a massive investment to become a major sports facility. I mean, maybe that is the right course of action, but I feel we also should compare that proposal to a second option to really nut things out. And the second option would be for Coburg to be developed as a district level pool. At the moment, I think it's a local pool, developed as a district level pool, which would also allow some funds to be freed up to do some upgrades to the Coburg Olympic pool and also the Pascoe pool. I feel that, yes, I mean, I certainly think I support the recommendation to do the redevelopment of the Fawkner pool within the next 5 years, but I think just to let the Pascoe and Coburg Olympic pool limp along with just some maintenance, I think, is problematic.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other? So you're foreshadowing that if this is unsuccessful?
I've got an alternative resolution. If this doesn't get
up. Okay. Any other councillors like to speak either in favour or against the motion that's before us? Councillor Riley.
Yes. Look, I just want to thank everybody who's participated in this consultation and development. This is a first. This is the first time we've actually developed a strategy that caters to all of our 6 aquatic centres. The numbers involved are huge, and the length of the the plan is also probably one of the more lengthy plans we have, which is looking beyond the sort of immediate and short term and medium term into the long term. So some of the figures there are getting into the 20-year time frame, and that's because of the nature of these structures. There are many of them, their end of their life phase, and they need lots of investment to go forward. And as has been said, I don't wish to repeat everything that's been said, but I'll try and keep it brief. But we are trying to manage and get the balance right. Excuse me. And it's a difficult task, and I'm sure we haven't got it perfect, and we will be able to come back and amend this and revisit it now based on the research and all of the consultation and the work and the input that people have had from locals across the board. So I just want to commend everyone for the work that's gone into this. We are trying to keep all of our pools open. We know how important they are as community facilities, Mr. Dolby, and we even have musical events and all sorts of things going on. And with the biggest infrastructure investments we've ever made in our city have been Oak Park, which is currently under construction, and the Brunswick Baths. So these are massive investments. They are not small, and this task has been a massive one. And I just think the outcome of this is bearing some fruit. Obviously, we won't all be satisfied, but I think it will satisfy many of the people in the city, and at least we'll be able to keep our pools running pretty much in the fashion that they are. And we are trying to plan the future as to whether we have district pools or world heritage style attractions that will cater to everybody's need. So I'm sure we'll get to that eventually in the plan. So thank you for everyone for their effort.
Councillor Carly Hannon.
So I'd like to begin by commending the work of all of our officers and the community in the consultation. I think that all of us councillors have spent a lot of time on this and really have found it very helpful to have all of that feedback. There's a few key things to me in setting up this strategy. The main thing is that Brunswick Baths is a very important pool to our residents, and it caters at the moment, it's going to in the future cater to 70,000 residents. That's its capacity. And as you can all see, Brunswick is really growing. So what I often think about is, well, where are the residents that flow over, not only that live in Brunswick, but also the increased population that we're seeing in the north of the city? We have to consider that Coburg has to also be a really important hub for our leisure centre. In terms of Brunswick, we have the benefit of it being an outdoor pool, an indoor pool and a gymnasium. The only other gymnasiums are Coburg Leisure Centre and Faulkner. Then the other thing that we have is our outdoor pools, which are Coburg and Pascoe Vale. So when I think about our aquatic strategy, I like to separate those outdoor pools that are our summer facilities from the leisure centres that provide our swimming lessons, our exercise. We want to put in a wellness centre to help our ageing population and those with a disability and other residents who need to use those warmer pools. And there's a whole lot of things there that we have to think about to cater for all of our residents. And as we've all pointed out tonight, it's a strategy that going forward we can reconsider, but it's not that we're going to turn Coburg into a pool that's going to cater for people outside Moreland. It's actually going to be a pool that we need essentially to cater for the growing population of Moreland.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors like to speak?
I just wanted to congratulate, I know we've had a lot of comments, but this has been something that I've been really passionate about, even though I probably haven't displayed it to everyone, but I'm really glad that our officers have come up with a fantastic strategy to really your team. I just want to congratulate you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors like to speak to it? Councillor Doherty.
Yeah, I'd also just like to commend the work of officers on this huge and enormous investment in aquatic centres for the City of Moreland. I think it's an important point just to note that we are currently, residents of Moreland have access to an aquatic facility within 5 kilometres of their residence. 98% actually within 3 kilometres, and 35 have access to 2 aquatic facilities within 3 kilometres of their home. So it's trying to maintain that radius and make sure that our facilities are as close and as accessible to everyone, and considering the whole community. It's a strategy that hasn't been taken lightly. There's been so much to consider, and I really commend the officers' work in this huge body of research, and I welcome the strategy.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors like to speak? If there's no other speakers, I'd like to say a few words about the strategy, please. If this aquatic strategy is endorsed in a few minutes' time, it's great news for moorland pool users. This strategy, as we've mentioned, is a 6-pool strategy. It commits Moreland to maintaining the valued pools within all 6 pools within our municipality. More pools, I believe, than any other metropolitan council in Australia. Right from the very beginning, I stated that the Save Pascoe Vale pool name was an incorrect name because, in my view, the pool was never in danger. For me, lately I've seen posters of Protect Pascoe Vale pool, and I think that is the way that should have been framed from the very beginning. In this council, at no time has a council report come before council advocating the closure of a pool, except in 2007 when the Coburg Outdoor Pool was closed for 1 season at the request of Melbourne Water during the greatest drought in Victoria's history. The 6 pools are protected in this strategy. This is because of the commitment of the 11 people around this table, around this council table, and previous councillors who have sat around the table. These are the people who deserve the thanks of the community. At this point in time, this council has been left to fund pool improvements on our own. We are currently completing the total transformation of Oak Park Aquatic Centre, a total investment of $27.3 million. A project, by the way, that's on time and on budget. But it is a project that council has had to fund entirely from ratepayers' money. Not $1 of support from the federal government, not $1 of support from the state government. I'm more than happy to have received an 8-page submission on the aquatic strategy from the member of Pascoe Vale, Lizzie Blanthorne, and it concludes with this sentence, and I quote her submission. Quote, I look forward to seeing the pools in the electorate of Pascoe Vale and the entire Moreland municipality utilised, loved and valued by our ever-growing population, unquote. I agree entirely with these sentiments, but what I find a disconnect is that we have had no effective advocacy for state government funding for our pools. Oak Park is one pool under her watch, and that lack of advocacy meant that we have not received 1 cent in support. I strongly encourage her to back up those words with action. I strongly encourage her, and I encourage Frank Maguire as well, because we're but the next pool to be done will be Faulkner, and we expect support from our state government on this. Why do other municipalities receive more than words from their local members? In anticipation of the vote in a few moments' time, I thank councillors because it's your commitment in funding these 6 pools. Right? So you are not only talking the talk, but you're walking the walk, and you're bringing what the Moreland community want, the 6-pool strategy.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's from me. You can, well, there hasn't been a speaker, Sue didn't really speak against the debate, so in fact you don't really... Yeah, so because that you don't really get a reply, all right? Okay.
Thank you.
Right, we're going to put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Okay, and we'll declare that carried. All right, well done, councillors, and well done, officers. Moving on to the next council report, final Charles Mutton, DSD 1418, adoption of final Charles Mutton Reserve Precinct feasibility plan, and Councillor Farley is on his feet.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move a deferral for 1 month for this report, and if I have the opportunity to explain why, I'd like that if possible.
In a deferral, we don't have debate, do we? We do need a seconder, though, don't we?
Need a seconder?
Yeah.
No debate.
Need a seconder?
New meeting procedure, but not under the current meeting procedure.
No, I think even on the current, we don't have a debate on the... Oh, yes, we will have debate at that point. I think...
Well, I'm happy to second it.
You're happy to second it, yeah, okay. Councillor Bolton, but unfortunately...
I don't think we do, actually.
Well, can we check?
Doesn't matter. It's a moot point.
I remember in other times that we haven't been able to.
So it's procedural.
Yeah.
So put in an
No debate. No, okay. All right, we'll put that to the vote, the deferral motion, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Okay? That's a shame. All right, so we'll defer to the next council meeting. Okay, we move on to the next item, council action plan item, Wheatsheaf Community Hub update, and DSD 1518. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move the officer recommendation with a slight amendment to point 4, and I can outline what my slight amendment is and then potentially look for a seconder and I'll explain everything. So that my slight amendment to that is that we add an additional sentence on the end of point 4, and that is that a part of this report consideration is given for ground floor structural reinforcements to provide a future council the option of expansion to the second floor. And if I have a seconder, I'm happy to.
Okay, I've got Councillor Yildiz has a hand in a second. So, okay, thank you. You've got a seconder. So
I will talk to the entire report. This is a fantastic initiative and project for the area. What this is a new library for Glenroy with early learning components attached into that. And what this is it is actually building the biggest library in the municipality in Glenroy, in the area where we need the biggest library. We are going to be trying to build it. And so what we have before us is an amazing opportunity to really lift Glenroy and provide it with this fantastic plan and project. And one thing I would really like to emphasise with this one, we have the Give Glenroy a Go campaign going at the moment, and I really encourage every resident in the entire municipality to really get behind it, because it's not just residents of Glenroy. We really need all the residents of Brunswick and Coburg and everyone to really get behind this, because this is for a better moorland. And one thing in particular, which I really would like to emphasise, is at the moment, council are facing the state government selling off our parks, and they're forcing council to buy them back. We've had mention before of the Oak Park Aquatic Centre, which we had to fund ourselves because we got no state government money. At the moment, the federal member has committed funding to this project, but we have got nothing from our state government. Now, this is a government that is billions of dollars in surplus. We really need state government money to make this project a reality. And so I really do encourage all residents to really get behind this campaign, lobby the state government, so we can build this fantastic project for the people of Glenroy and for the people of Moreland.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Yildiz, your seconder, would you like to speak to it?
Glenroy, I think, to some extent, has been a bit of a forgotten suburb, especially in that area of Glenroy. And I think $6 million is all we need, isn't it? So the federal government's happy to chip in that money. I just think that whole area, I was there actually 2 weeks ago, and a lady took me through and showed me what she's been doing with elderly residents, teaching them art. And she said, if this venue was better developed, I can guarantee I'd have probably 3 or 4 times the amount of students I've got here, but the room's too small and I'm only able to rent this tiny little room. So the question that beckons me is, I can't believe we can't find the funding for a hub like Wheatsheaf Hub, which is really going to activate that whole space in and around Glenroy and neighbouring suburbs too. So, mate, good on you. And yet again, something that I absolutely support 100%.
Thank you, Councillor Yildiz. Would any other councillors like to speak in favour or against? Yes.
Just very briefly, to not be repeating myself, but I just wanted to emphasise how important it is that council be quite strategic, and it has been in the past, and it's a prime example, in snapping up strategic parcels of land. And this school that was purchased a number of years ago in Saxon Street in Brunswick, where there is a report later on in today's agenda, because our community is growing and there is future need for services, for libraries, in fact, for a whole range of state and council services. So we wouldn't be able to do that if we hadn't made these strategic purchases. So I think as a council, we've been quite fortunate, but we need to continue to be innovative and look for strategic purchases into the future. So I like to also say that this is going to be so important for the future of Glenroy, and it will happen. But if we are able to get some state government money, it will happen a lot sooner. And I'm really pleased to see that our federal member, Peter Khalil, has committed to providing $6 million if the Labor government, if there is a future federal Labor government, and I think that would just give it the boost to get this project up and away, and I hope that we can get a similar commitment from Daniel Andrews in the future.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against? Being no speakers against, I think I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. DSD 1618, contract 697T, Campbell Reserve Soccer Field reconstruction. Do I have a mover? Yep, Councillor Carly Hannon. You're moving the officer report, officer recommendation, and seconded by Councillor Yildiz. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Carly Hannon?
I'll just speak to it to say I went past the other day and the works are going ahead nicely. And it's important to note that this is a partnership between council and the state government.
That's correct. Good. Thank you, Councillor Carly Hannon. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Yildiz?
Just point of order. I'm the number one ticket holder for this club. Do I have to declare a conflict of interest?
Might be. I think it's probably what I don't know.
I think it would be.
I think it's wise.
Yeah.
All right. Would you like to do that,
Yeah,
Councillor? Okay. I might ask you to exclude yourself, and I might. Yeah, I'll find. Can we have another seconder? Right, Councillor Tapanos. We'll just hold the debate until Councillor leaves. Okay. Would you like to speak to a Councillor Tapanos as a seconder?
Sure, once more, great community facilities. We know that sporting clubs are at capacity and there is more need for grounds and pitches, and I think that this is going to go a long way to alleviate some of the pressure that are faced by our sporting clubs, and I fully support it.
Okay. Any further discussion on this? Being no further discussion, I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Right, we move to the next report, which is DED 3418, 275 Moreland Road, Coburg, in other words, John Faulkner Hospital, redevelopment request for work outside normal working hours. Do we have a mover? Moved by Councillor Funley. You're moving the officer recommendation, yes, Councillor Funley? And do we have a seconder? Second by Councillor Davidson. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Funley? Councillor Davidson? Anyone like to speak against the motion? Yep.
Yeah, I would. I think there was a previous time when John Faulkner Hospital asked for doing work out of hours that I actually did vote for. But I sort of feel as if there's a bit of contradiction in their arguments, because they argue that they have to do this work in an uninterrupted way for 14 hours and can't interrupt it, so that's why they need to work out of hours. But then they indicate that if the work's not finished on the Saturday, they can stop it and resume it on the Sunday, which I feel is a bit of a contradiction, and maybe this might just be sort of convenient, obviously convenient, but I sort of am not, especially hearing from the resident earlier in question time that actually there are operations that do take place on the Saturday and Sunday at the hospital. I am inclined to vote against this, because I feel as if, well, if the work needs to go on uninterrupted for 14 hours, then you do that all on the one day, if that's the actual genuine argument by the company. You wouldn't stop it and then start on a Sunday. Otherwise, it means that they could actually do this work during the week. So I'm against it.
Thank you. Any councillors in favour? Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if there's anyone else, I'm happy to close it.
Yes, because you had to speak against it. Yeah, okay, I'll just hold on for you. Are there any other speakers? Okay, you can close the debate.
Oh, look, I mean, look, my father's an electrician. I did a heap of switchboards with him back in the day. It's incredibly dangerous work. When you're playing with the mains power coming off the street into the actual facility. So if they need an extended period of time to do this very dangerous work when you're working with high-powered electrical equipment, then let's give them the time. It reads that the generators are going to be housed in acoustic enclosures. So, I mean, the quicker they get this done, the better for the hospital, and the quicker the actual construction can be done. So I'm happy with the council officer's recommendation.
Okay, so it closes the debate and we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. DED 3518, Council Action Plan Item, Amendment C169, Advertising and Club Signage in Open Spaces. This is Decision Gateway 2, Consideration of Submissions and Request for Panel. I think the title is going to take longer than the debate. Do we have anyone moving the item? Moved by Councillor Martin. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Carly Hannon. Thank you. And you're moving the officer recommendation?
Yes.
Right. Any discussion, Councillor Martin?
Just briefly, I would like to state that what we're doing here is we're just making it easier for clubs to erect advertising and signage around the grounds. I would like to make one point, and this is an item that I will foreshadow for a discussion at a later date. I, as a councillor, and I may be in the minority on the council here, but I do have a slight issue with fast food companies advertising to junior players in the municipality, and it's one of those things that it's a very big, broad issue when you have, your McDonald's running the bulk of children's activities on those grounds. You have Milo, which is an incredibly sugary drink, also running all the summer sports and the cricket. So I would like to foreshadow that I will be doing some investigation with officers to look at our guidelines at a later date, because I think it's something that councils have a responsibility to our youth to look into that. And so I would just like to make that known.
Thank you,
We could write to Weet-Bix.
Councillor Carly Hannon.
I will speak quickly on this one because this was actually an issue that I was involved with before becoming a councillor. So it might seem quite small, but I actually know there's a lot of work that's been done by clubs and council officers on this. So great work.
Would you like to speak to it, Councillor? No. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, being no further debate, I'll put it to vote. All those in favour? Against? Declared and carried. We move on now to DED 3618. It's a council action plan item and it's multi-use community facility at 33 Saxon Street, Brunswick. Recommendations for concept plan stage. Moved by Councillor Tapanos but seconded by Councillor Dorney. Okay, Councillor, sorry, didn't see that. Councillor Tapanos, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, and once more, I'd like to begin by thanking everyone who has participated. Particularly, I noted that during the Sydney Road Street Party, there was a very engaging community consultation and a lot of residents and passers-by were able to participate in the consultation process. So a lot of those ideas are now embedded into this document. And as I mentioned previously, this is such a strategic purchase and a strategic site for council. There have been many discussions over a number of years of what is its future and many positive suggestions. We need to make sure we get this one right because we don't get this kind of opportunity to build a community hub in the centre of Brunswick every day. We certainly don't. So we are consulting the community, we are making progress, and we are waiting to see what are the next and exciting steps to what is going to one day be a fantastic community hub that engages our arts community, our services, and brings everyone together. So I'm really excited about the future of this project.
Thank you. And Councillor Dorney.
Yeah, I'm also excited about the where this site is currently at, as well as what potential it has. It's such a beautiful vibe at this place, and I don't know if it's that old school vibe that you get walking into the buildings, but it feels really lovely, and I'm very excited to put forward the officer's recommendations on some potential uses for this site moving forward. Everything from passive open space sites through to maternal and child health services, youth facilities, community gardens. The list goes on and on. So I am really looking forward to what this concept plan looks like, and I highly recommend people getting down and checking out Saxon Street if you haven't already. There's Black Dot Gallery, which is there, which is an Aboriginal gallery, which is really great to go and see if you haven't seen it, and there's a range of community groups and facilities that run out of the site. I'd also just like to say in the medium term, one thing that Council is looking at is Phoenix Street, which just runs north of the site. There's a potential maybe down the track to look at some open space potential as well. So really interested in how that all pans out.
Thank you, Councillor Dorney. Any other, Councillor Bolton?
I'd like to say a few words. I think this is very good that we're doing this. It feels like a bit of a circuitous route because Brunswick Neighbourhood House has been looking for a new home for quite a lot of years because it's outgrown their premises, they're split between two sites. And I know that a few years ago when we were looking at what to do with Saxon Street, they were hoping for a new home at Saxon Street, but they missed out. So I think it's great that finally there's a proposal that, they'd be able to go into Saxon Street with some planning around all of the different uses for the site. So I think this is a really great outcome, and I'm really pleased. Well, pleased for everybody, but actually especially pleased for Brunswick Neighbourhood House, who's been really struggling in their premises with little gaps in the walls and so forth, letting the weather in. So, and I think, probably I'm sure once this is all planned out, we'll be doing something much more in terms of signage, because I think this Saxon Street area at the moment, a lot of people, unless they're really familiar with the area, don't know it even exists. I mean, I think more people know now because there are some groups that have been organising regular activities, but I think it's also still a very hidden part of Brunswick, and a lot of people don't necessarily know it's there and would use the space if they were aware of it. So, but I'm sure that can be worked out in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Do we have any other speakers? Being no further speakers, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. And we have DED 3718, Declaration of Sydney Road Brunswick Shopping Precinct, Combination Special Rate and Charge Scheme. Moved by Councillor Riley. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Farnley. And we'd like to speak to a councillor.
Yes, just want to remove the officer's recommendation as put. As I mentioned earlier, at question time, the association and the work that the associations do in our shopping strips, particularly this iconic shopping strip of Sydney Road, and in particular, being a Southward representative, the Brunswick version of that association is really important, and it's going through a lot of pressures, a lot of changes at the moment, and this is one way of ensuring that that shopping strip gets the support and the promotion that it requires for all of the sorts of social marketing and economic reasons that we have in the activities in those areas, and all the sort of transport significance and the issues that are coming into that area as well in the future as we look to welcome accessible tram stops one day when the state government gets around to actually bringing it on. At the moment it's often the never, but in the meantime this is a good way of defraying the costs and bringing people together collaboratively to do that. There are three objectors. Some of them don't want to be part of the scheme because they don't feel they get any benefit. Unfortunately, in democracy, they'll just have to suck it up, but I'm sure they'll get a lot of the benefits, and they can attend a couple of the events that the association runs, and the one I just promoted with the window dressing and the artwork there might be one way they can enjoy the benefits of their investment. And I just want to commend the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Councillor Farnley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, it can be quite difficult for a single small business to have a voice. They have a lot of different challenges that they've got to deal with. So these associations are important because they bring all those different small businesses together as a collective to act essentially as an advocacy body together and really generate far more influence, whether it be with local council, state government or with shoppers. So it's extremely important. Look, I'm well aware that retailers have struggled through probably one of the worst Christmas periods in terms of sales on record. So it's not an easy time to be a retailer. So the marketing and activity that can help is extremely important. At the same time, it's also important to recognise that these aren't insignificant costs to a lot of these businesses. they can be quite significant. So I do acknowledge that some of them have raised some concerns. So I put it back onto the coordinator at that Sydney Road Brunswick Association to make sure all those small businesses feel as engaged as possible and make sure that they feel they are being valued and that their dollars are actually spent as wisely and as constructively as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Farley. Any other councillors like to speak to this item? Being no further discussion, I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. We move on to DED 38, statutory law. Yep. Okay. Planning scheme review, and moved by Councillor Abood. You're moving the officer recommendation,
Yes,
Councillor Abood?
Yep.
And seconded by Councillor Martin. Would like to speak to it, Councillor Abood?
Yes, I would. For me, this is the heart and soul of what we're doing in this place. And I would recommend that if anyone has the time, they send their children, if they have children, to their mothers for the weekend and read the 110-page document that goes with this report, which is called the Planning Scheme Report. Because what I noted in this document was that social housing has not increased from the period of 2006 to 2016. 75 to 100,000 households still are in demand for. Sorry, there is a 75 to 100,000 household list that are people still waiting. That rent assistance for a couple on Centrelink pension has dropped from 25% to 2% in that same period. That Fawkner has recorded an 11% increase in food security. That the report has identified a need for additional neighbourhood centre in Fawkner, and we're sort of putting the wheels in motion towards that goal as a moderate priority goal. That 71% of new dwellings constructed in the last 5 years had 2 bedrooms or less. That the population and housing forecasts show that single-person households will be the largest household type by 2036. So we take from this that the implications on council to make sure that the social impacts of potential isolation for those people in those big developments living by themselves is something that we will be dealing with here. So knowing this is important. There's been an increase in people travelling to work in the CBD. The best we can do with that is advocate to the state government to please improve the public transport. 25% decline in canopy cover on private land in that 10-year period. 25% is huge. That's a quarter of the canopy is gone on private land. The urban heat island effect is causing parts of the city to be 4 to 7 degrees warmer. That Brunswick house prices have doubled in the last 5 years. I didn't get to transport, and I didn't get, because I thought I would have run out of time by now, but I didn't get to, the 46 potential errors that we will consider in the future corrections amendments, determining zones that we've, nominated that probably need to be changed, and the people who are affected by this will know what I'm talking about. But for me, this planning scheme report, and I don't know who put it together, I imagine there was a bunch of people, is really the heart and soul of what needs to guide a lot of the work that we're going to be doing over the next decade. So I stand up to endorse this document and pass it with great pride and admiration for the people who've prepared this work. It's quite amazing.
Thank you, Councillor Booth. Sorry, Councillor Martin.
I rise to speak in favour of the report as councillor responsible for urban planning. I do acknowledge all of the comments that Councillor Abood has just made. Urban planning is a hugely tricky area for councillors. I know it's a huge learning curve when you get on council. One of the things that we did commit as a council was that all councillors would be on the urban planning committee, and that's something that we are seeing now. It is showing that we are committed to planning, and we are committed to looking at things that tie into planning. Anyone that says that planning's off over there and it's completely isolated from other areas of council does have rocks in their head, because planning is so integral for everything that we do. Infrastructure, and for the state and federal governments to kind of ignore it as a local government issue and say, oh, well, they need to fix that themselves. They do have rocks in their head if they're saying those sort of things, because what we need to do as a council is we have a huge amount of things in that list that we need to actually look at. We need to start working towards. But I would like to acknowledge the great work that we have had done in this report by our officers, but also the great work that our planning department does. We have a huge volume of planning submissions each year. and what we're really trying to do through this process. And so for those that don't know, this is a statutory requirement that we have to do this review. It's not the only way that we can influence changes to our planning scheme, and so there are many other options that we can do. One of the things that we've just started investigating is a design excellence scorecard and other processes that we can use, because we do recognise that planning is really important, and I really do hope that you don't spend your whole weekend reading the report, but you do get a chance to read it when you can.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Do we have any other discussion on this report? Yes, Councillor.
Just a couple of other words. I actually think there is a lot of work in this which is really useful. I would like to draw out a couple of points which have been made in the report, which I think sort of food for thought, but I actually think it is worth studying, because there are a lot of different elements of this, and I think it is very good that this has been reviewed. One element that it points out is that there are 14 pockets of land in Moreland in the Commercial 1 zone and the Mixed Use zone, which are outside the designated activity centres and outside the neighbourhood centre boundaries, where there are no specific local planning policy or planning tools. So it means this is a case with one of the buildings just near Ceres, from memory, where there was a plan for a building that was, you know, many stories higher than the surrounding houses. So this is an opportunity to try and pick up some of those anomalies. Also, it's proposing that there be an improvement in the clarity of the location of neighbourhood centre boundaries. And I noticed that it also picks up some of the outstanding review recommendations, which weren't one from 2010 when a similar process happened. And it made me think things would have been a lot, if something had been dealt with then, things would have been a lot easier for the Fawkner residents. And this is something which, you know, we haven't won the state government to, is to advocate to the state government to seek a more rigorous involvement and greater accountability from the EPA in potentially contaminated land matters, such as the responsibility in applying the environmental audit orders and enforcing preparation of an audit. Also seek the EPA to provide clarification around when to require an audit, that is before planning scheme amendment or permit process or after. Actually, it would have been very useful if we could have won that some time ago. That predates my time on council. But, you know, I mean, I think there are many, many faults in that whole environmental audit system, which leaves the community at risk. So, yeah, I would commend the report to anyone who wants to study it, because I think there is information and there are a lot of things that council will need to follow up on coming out of this report.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Any further discussion on this report? Being no further discussion, we put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next report is DED 3918, Council Action Plan Item, Deliberative Development Research Paper.
I'd like to move a procedural motion that we defer this report.
Thank you, Councillor Rowley. Let's get them look at. Do I need a second for that?
Procedural motion?
Right.
Yeah,
No, sir.
Can we?
I'll second it. Okay, so we'll just put it straight to the vote.
Can I ask a question? What is the purpose of the deferral?
You can't ask that. It's
No,
procedural.
Just vote on.
You're going to vote on it? Hang on. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Sorry, it's just part of our... Okay.
We talked about it at the briefing.
Yeah, that's right. There you go.
It's time to discuss
Yeah,
it later.
all right. Okay, councillors, right, go to debate. And we move on to EMOD 218, Council Action Plan 2017 to 21, Council Action Plan Financial Year 2017-18, Quarter 3 report. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Abood. Have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Abood.
Yeah, so
Sorry,
I'd like...
you're moving the officer recommendation, I assume?
Yes, I'd like to move the officer recommendation.
Thank you.
I would like to encourage all councillors who have the time to attend the briefing about this financial report, because it's invaluable for me and I think that we can all benefit from it. I'd like to wave to James Scott who's on leave, and I'd also like to commend Liz Rowland for her work in taking up this business, and I think it's been good.
Okay, thank you. And seconded? Councillor Udez, you were the seconder.
I just
Would
have
you like to speak to it?
I have a slight amendment that I'd like to make to this, if it's okay with the mover and the seconder, and that is to reset the comments for CAP 59 by removing 2018 to 2022 waste and litter strategy has been approved from that document, because it in fact has not.
Okay. Is that acceptable?
Yes, it is.
Is that acceptable to you as a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Udez. Okay, so that becomes a substantive motion. Thank you. Any further discussion now, also including that extra point that was moved by Councillor Martin? Okay, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Corporate services, we've got DCS 2318, Governance Report, June 2018. Moving by Councillor Abood. The officer report, is it, Councillor Abood? The officer recommendation. And do we have a seconder? And Councillor Martin. Thank you, Councillor Abood, if you'd like to speak to it.
So I'd also like to commend the team responsible for putting this governance report together, and I want to draw attention to a couple of things that I've been directly involved with, and one is the Oxygen Committee Terms of Reference document. So I would like to thank Jason Clark. I've had the pleasure of working with Jason many times, and I find him to be completely invaluable. I've worked with several facilitators, but I think he's really good at his job, and I think that the work that he did with the new Oxygen Committee has really bedded down a dynamic, diverse, positive group of young people who I really look forward to working with them further. But also, I am really thrilled to accept, as part of this motion, the Year 1 actions of the food system strategy. I'm so proud to be involved with this work. It's just absolutely remarkable what has been done in the last year, and we've gone well beyond what I thought we would even go beyond in terms of the social diversity implications, the fact that the Fawkner Bowls Club has kind of been reborn and given a new lease on life. You know, we're growing food in the city already, and, you know, people are connecting over dirt. It's as good as it gets for me, so I just think this is fantastic.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. I do, again, follow the comments that Councillor Abood has just made. I really do agree with those comments. I kind of understand why this report was kind of bundled of a few different reports, because I know most of the councillors around this table will be standing to comment on every single one of these pieces of work. It is really fantastic, and it is really something that Moreland City as a council can hang their hat on, especially in the zero carbon space. I mean, just looking at some of the things, noting that we had a yearly target of 750 kilowatts of solar to be installed across the municipality. We've exceeded that, and now with the help of MEFL, we've just ticked over 1 megawatt, which is a phenomenal return for our money, especially when if you were to go out and you were to source that yourself and install that yourself, you'd be looking at millions of dollars. So not only are we increasing the amount of renewable energy in the city, but we're also saving ratepayers money by using what we have in our city and fantastic organisations like MEFL to really accelerate the transition. So I think it's fantastic. Also talking about some of the great plans that we have, some of the great programs we have, Council's Solar on Lease Facilities program, which is really kicking goals in that space. All of the programs that we've got to combat the urban heat island effect, the Cooling Communities project, the urban forest strategy, the Cooling the Upfield Corridor plan. This is fantastic work, and it is all happening here in Moreland. So, you know, emphasising that Water Map 2020, the construction or the work towards the hydrogen refuelling station. I mean, this is a city that is really kicking goals in this space, and every single officer that has been involved in this should give themselves a pat on the back, because it is a really fantastic thing to be standing up here as a councillor spruiking this work. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Is there any other discussion on this report? With no further discussion, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Can we move on to DCS 2418, Cyclical Report Financial Management Report for the period 30th of April 2018. Councillor Bird, you're moving the officer recommendation?
Yes, I am. And
seconded by Councillor Dorney. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Bird?
Yeah, I'd like to transfer all the comments I made to EMOD 218 to this report, and I'd like to thank Councillor Riley for pointing out my error, which I've just realised. This is the report that I was talking about, which is to do with the financials, and it's showing us that we're good at forecasting what we need to save money for. We're good at keeping it within our budget, and financially we're doing really, really well in terms of honouring our commitment to the city to deliver what we said we would deliver on time and under budget. So it's a great document.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. Councillor Dorney, did you want to speak to it? Anyone else? Being no further discussion, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. We've got DCS 2518. Councillor Abood is on her feet.
Here I am again.
And you're moving?
The officer recommendation with a slight amendment.
Okay, would you try to tell us the amendment, then I'll call for a second.
Yes, and the amendment is at 13, hang on a sec. To do with, here, 9 at number 13.
No, so section 9, part 13.
Yep,
okay.
so it's to do with questions from the gallery. And it reads, when invited by the chairperson, the person submitting the question may ask their question without taking longer than, it says 1 minute, I'd like to change it to 2 minutes, please.
Okay, so you're moving everything else except that change?
That's right.
All right, and do I have a seconder? Actually, yes.
Sorry, can I just have a word? Sorry.
Yep.
I'll second it in the meantime.
All right, okay.
And you can
It's including your amendment.
Sure. Well, do you want to second it and then?
I'm happy to second it, and then Councillor Riley can make an amendment.
Okay, all right, okay, so seconded by Councillor Martin. So currently we've moved Councillor Abood's motion, which only changes 1 minute to 2 minutes, and that's the only change from the officer report, and that's been seconded by Councillor Martin. All right, so would you like to speak to that?
I reserve the right.
Okay, you only get to speak though, in that case if someone speaks against the motion.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, all right, would you like to speak a seconder? Okay, all right, Councillor Riley.
Can I just foreshadow? I suggest these amendments which have gone round to people who came from his role this afternoon in relation to the discussions we've had around this. So, besides the excuse me, it's that time of the year.
Sent at 4:32 to everyone.
4:32 today on your emails, councillors.
All right. Okay.
Essentially, I'll just read them out.
Yep.
That the besides the amendment that has already been mentioned, that we added at point 2B, redraft clause 63.5C to define significant as more than $5,000.
Actually, I don't think I've got them either,
I
Councillor
haven't
Riley.
got them. I've just sent them to you again.
It's 533 from Councillor Abood is the latest in that chain.
I've just sent it to you again, Sue.
Have we got them up there? Are they up on the screen?
Right.
They're on the screen.
Okay, all right, so just read them only, but we're not discussing them till.
Yeah, I'll read them only. C, redraft clause 40 to include gesticulate offensively in addition to interjecting. D, redraft clauses 63.4 and 63.5 to remove reference to the need for notices of motion to align to the council plan. And E, redraft clause 20 to remove clause 20, number 2, that states it is unnecessary to send copies of the meeting notice and agenda to councillors that have been granted leave of absence. And
okay, now we're just going to try and get it back on the screen. We have. All right, so, okay. Is everyone clear on those?
Yep.
Right. Now, the mover was Councillor Abood. Are those amendments acceptable to the mover?
Yes, absolutely.
And are they acceptable to the seconder?
Yep.
Okay, so they'll become part of the substantive motion now? Okay, all right. Now, does anyone else would you like to speak to the substantive motion? Yeah, okay.
yeah, look, I just want to thank officers and councillors for the discussion around this, because these matters are important. And as somebody who was subject to some gesticulation at, I think it was the last meeting, I wanted to make sure that we actually covered that, because It's quite disturbing when you get up here and you're having people make fairly offensive signs at you when you're actually trying to gather your thoughts and speak on fairly important matters. And it's just always good courtesy that we actually treat each other with respect in this city, and that's what we try to aim to do with all the diversity of opinions and ideas, backgrounds and cultures. And I just want to thank the officers for getting this wording right. The other tidy up clauses here are really just to make it reflect more the practice and the fact that we were sort of, with some of these were actually overcomplicating things a little bit in terms of going on leave. We want councillors to be able to see what business is going on, even if you are in the Bahamas, you'll be able to still get the papers electronically. We're out in the global world, and it's still possible to be able to breathe and read agendas at the same time while you're sipping your pina colada or whatever you might be doing. So the other issue around the significance of at 63.5 was really just to get a clarity about what measure that was. So we've actually got a dollar figure there now to help make that clear to people so that we know what severity people will be dealing with when these clauses come into effect. I think I'll leave it at that.
Okay, good. So that we, anyone else want to speak for or against the substantive motion? Councillor Bolt.
I've got some amendments, which I sent around earlier as well.
Okay, so we'll deal with, okay.
So one of my amendments is, these were all sent around earlier, is section 935 in brackets 5. No, section 935 in brackets 13.
Okay.
And the last sentence, the last part of that sentence, which Councillor Budd is proposing be amended as well, the last part of that sentence should be amended to including providing context without taking longer than 3 minutes.
Okay, right, okay, so that's, okay,
Instead
right.
of 2 minutes, I'm proposing 3 minutes.
Okay, all right, do you want to do them individually? Do you want to look at them
Maybe I
individually?
should do them
I think so.
individually,
All right.
some people might
Okay, so
support
can I
some
ask
more
first of
than
all, is that acceptable to the mover and the seconder?
Okay, I just have to get my head around this. The 3 minutes isn't.
No, that's all we're dealing with at the moment.
Thank you.
3 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not
I'm
acceptable?
opting for 2
All
minutes.
right, okay, so I'll check whether you've got a...
What about the other part, including providing context without taking longer than...
Oh, right, okay.
Already?
So-
One more time, John. Well, I'll put that one to the vote. That's right.
Okay, all right,
I'd
hang
like
on.
to explain my reasons.
Yeah, hang on. I'll just see then, if it's not acceptable to the mover and second, I'll see if you've got a seconder first. Does anyone want a second this amendment by Councillor Bolton?
For 3 minutes.
For 3 minutes. Okay.
And including context for the
Yeah.
question.
So I'll just be clear. I'm asking, is there a seconder to Councillor Bolton's alternative, which says including providing context without taking longer than 3 minutes? Is there a seconder? There's not, so it lapses for want of a seconder. Right, okay, so hang on, no, I think Councillor Bolton's got some more, have you?
Okay, yes. Section 935 in brackets 8. I'm proposing that we delete the last sentence, and the last sentence reads that public question time will not be extended for the purposes of responding to questions that are not related to matters listed on the agenda.
Okay,
I'd
all
like
right.
to propose that sentence be
Okay,
deleted.
right. Now, is that acceptable to the mover and the seconder?
Okay, can public question time may be extended for one period of up to 2 periods of 7
Hang on.
minutes?
Sorry,
we
okay.
just lost it.
Sorry, hang on just
I
one second.
started with where you were at and then moving backwards, sorry.
All right. Okay, I'm just going to go to the CEO for a second because I don't want discussion unless we get a movement.
So just explanation.
Yep.
At the moment, there's a limitation to the number of times it's extended.
Yep.
The effect that this change would have is to allow a further extension.
At the moment, we have an hour of question time,
So-
2 30-minute blocks.
A period. Yes, so right now we have one extension of a further 30 minutes.
Yep.
This would provide for 2 extensions of an additional 30 minutes each,
Yep.
which would bring it to an hour and a half potentially.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but if you could get a second, I'm not.
No, okay, so it's not acceptable to the mover and, okay. Is there anyone on the, any other councillor that wants to second that motion? Okay, it lapses for want of a seconder. Councillor Bolton, any more changes?
So in section 6 on notice of meetings and availability of agenda overview, the last part of the sentence, which is about providing the community with the date and time of council meetings and the agenda. So what I want to propose is that the council agenda is made available to the public at the same time that it is distributed to councillors.
Right. Okay,
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
this
Understand that, Councillor Bolton? Is that acceptable to the mover?
No, it's not.
Councillor Seconder. Okay. Once it's not acceptable to the mover, I won't bother about asking the seconder. Because then, okay, do we have a seconder from any other council will to second Councillor Bolton's amendment? Okay, it lapses for want of a seconder. Councillor Bolton.
Well, my last thing then is to add an extra dot point at the end, so point 7, to provide an explanation on the council website for the rationale for changing the Urban Planning Committee meetings to meetings designated for planning and related matters.
Is that acceptable to the mover and the seconder?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so that becomes part of the substantive motion. All right, so councillors, so we've got the substantive motion, we've got the changes of Councillor Riley originally, and the final change of Councillor Bolton to that. Are we clear on what we're voting on? Okay. Any other discussion? Yes, you may.
So I just wanted, to ask Councillor Bolton, with regard to the amendment that involves the question time and the backup. Like, I don't mind the first part of that amendment. It was just the 3 minutes that was an issue for me. So if you still wanted to include the language about...
Including providing context?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I don't see any problem with that. It's still within the 2-minute period.
Hang on. There's not okay, so that part's acceptable to you. Is it acceptable to the second?
No.
Okay. So once again, we've already asked if there's a seconder, but I'm happy to ask: is there a seconder to Councillor Bolton's motion who are not the mover of the seconder of the substantive motion? No. So it lapses for want of a seconder. Right, councillors, we're back to the substantive motion. When I say the substantive motion, it's what was moved by Councillor Abood originally. It was amended by Councillor Riley, and we put in the final explanation about the Urban Planning Committee changes to be published on the website. Okay. Any other discussion on this, councillors?
I'd like to, because I haven't discussed all
No, you haven't, so I'm happy for you to do that.
Well, in that case, as those amendments haven't been accepted, I'm going to argue...
Please just talk to the substantive
motion.
motion.
I'm going to argue against supporting this, because I think this is a further de-democratisation of council processes. I think council makes much better decisions when there is more public involvement rather than less public involvement. I think this is highly restrictive. Some other councils, more than one other council, actually has much more fluidity than we have in Moreland. So, for instance, Darebin and Yarra, and I think Banyule councils actually allow people to make statements about what they think about items on the agenda, not just these highly restrictive questions. And to ask a question in a minute where you're not allowed to put any context, I think that's really, 2 minutes, but how much can you say in 2 minutes? I just think that is really quite outrageous. And also, I mean, all sorts of issues are coming up in the municipality all the time, including things that might have even just urgent items that might have arisen on the day of the council meeting. And under this new meeting procedure, people will not be allowed to come and ask a question about something that's happened just that day. I actually think this is really quite outrageous because, and also I think people need an opportunity to ask questions and make statements in council meetings. Sometimes people have tried to make contact with councillors or council officers and not received replies. No doubt it's because of the burden of work, but people get very frustrated and they want to have a reply, and a reply in public sometimes, because sometimes answers might not be very clear or people feel like they're getting the runaround. I think, if we really believe in the word transparency, we would not be voting for this meeting procedure tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Carly Hannon.
I rise to just explain a little bit about why we have decided to go for the 2 minutes. So there's been a lot of discussion from councillors around this, and one of the main things is we have to consider how to ensure that our meetings finish at a reasonable time, and it's a health and safety matter not only for the councillors here but also for our staff. A lot of people have been working since 8 a.m. and to be finishing meetings after 10 p.m. at night is really not okay. The other thing that we've been considering is that we do, as councillors, try and be really responsive, and there are lots of avenues now for accessing councillors via Facebook, via email, via telephone, and pretty much every time something comes to the chamber, it is very rare that it's the first time that it's being discussed. Most of the time we have had the opportunity to get that background information. With 2 minutes, I do believe that you can provide some context and also provide your question adequately. The other thing is that we actually have the discretion of the Mayor, if the matter is really important and hasn't been able to be explained in the 2 minutes, to be provided a little bit more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carly Hannon. Any other speakers, either in favour or against? Just before, I'll let you close it because there was a speaker against. Councillor Riley?
Sorry.
Councillor Dorney, were you? Sorry, I missed your hand. Happy to go to Councillor Dorney.
I would also I thank Councillor Carly Hannon for the explanation around the justification of the 2 minutes. I think that 2 minutes is a adequate amount of time for someone to formulate and ask a question, and considering that council officers are also available to support people to be able to do that and to formulate their questions so that they are able to ask that within the time frame. There is a process of, if the person goes over the 2 minutes, that they're asked to wind their question up. And in terms of actually extending question time further, I think given that we do need to be out at a reasonable hour, I know I'm one of those people that started at 8 o'clock this morning, and there's lots of others in the same situation. We do need to try and wind meetings up, and I think an hour for question time, considering that so much of actually bringing issues and concerns to councillors and council's attention happens before we get to this stage at council meetings, and also it happens in bringing questions on notice and actually addressing them after meetings as well. So this, in terms, I don't feel it's stripping people of their democratic right. I feel that it is one of many avenues, and considering everything we need to get through, tonight's agenda is currently 800 pages long, and I think an hour with 2 minutes for everyone to ask their questions is ample time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorney. Councillor Riley.
Thank you. I just want to concur that I do think you can say a lot in 2 minutes, and I've certainly seen people do that in this chamber. I just want to reiterate, it's actually really important to say that we're not stopping people from turning up on the day to come and ask questions. That is not the intention of this motion or any of the amendments we've made tonight. In fact, anyone can come right up until the start of council beforehand, and there will be assistance to help people get the wordings written. So this is not about trying to prevent stuff, it's trying to get the balance right between how you get people to share it around, basically, because if we're going to have 30 minutes of question time, that allows effectively on average 15 questions. However, if we extend it, we can go up to 30 questions on a night because we'll go up to an hour. That's what we're currently looking at under these provisions. So if that's stopping democracy, I'll go he. There are many ways that you can actually activate and get involved in council. It isn't just by turning up and asking a question at council, as important as that is. There are many other ways that you can get involved, and I think the councillors, my fellow councillors, have just spoken to that, and I think that I'd encourage people to get involved in council in all of the different ways you can do that. We are actually addressing engagement and consultation currently with a working group. Some of those members are in the chamber tonight, and I thank them for being involved in that, and I'm hoping that the work and the results of that will flow through. I don't think, one less minute that's going to be redistributed to other people to speak is going to be the make or break of Moreland. A question would probably just start a process, not finish it. And this is about trying to encourage more people to become and ask questions, not to stop them asking questions. So we're trying to actually open it up to more question askers rather than people hogging all the time. So I don't quite get the maths. If I take it to my kids tomorrow at school and I ask them to do the math, I think they'd probably end up being able to to do the likelihood and get it right, to work that out.
Yeah.
And just in finally finishing, I just want to say that we've really been considering the health and safety issues for staff and the pressures and the ridiculous times that we have finished meetings in the last 18 months of my term. Although I have to commend officers for trying to get the agenda right so that we aren't actually staying here till 11 and 12 and beyond, because that's what's been happening. We are now going to schedule ourselves so that on Thursday nights we can actually reschedule things if things are so important and so substantive that we actually have to reconvene the next night, and we're going to make sure our diaries are clear for that. So I don't think this is trying to stop democracy. I just think it's trying to make it a little bit more balanced and fair, and I'm hoping people will understand that, and if they don't, I'm sure we'll hear about it, because it's more.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. We go to Councillor Tapanos, then we go to Councillor
Thank you, Mr.
Farnley.
Mayor. It is appropriate for every organisation to review its meeting procedure, its meeting procedures, and particular for a council. Things do change in a council, and certainly councillors quite often change after elections. So we need to make sure that we have the meeting rules that work for us, for this council. And in my experience, I think that what has been proposed will enable not just our meetings to run more smoothly and time to be saved, but also actually gain more information for councillors. And Councillor Riley is correct. Being able to limit the time for each question would enable more questions to be asked within that time period, and that is good for democracy. But I'll just point out one which we even saw today, that little things like making sure when we're deferring an item, we are giving a justification as to why we are deferring the item, so everyone can be more informed. I think that these are small improvements that go towards enhancing our democracy, and that's in the meeting procedure local law that we're adopting tonight. So, councillors, I do think that this discussion has been quite a long one. I know that it's one that's gone through a number of months and planning workshop meetings to get it right. So I hope that it can be adopted and we can move forward in running meetings that are more efficient but more effective as well. We've spoken tonight a lot about our staff and having them here so late, but I would also say that we don't make good decisions at midnight. It is great to have the big strategy decisions made in early on in the meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. And because it is a big item, I'm letting everyone speak who wants to, and we're up to Councillor
I hope I wasn't more than my 3 minutes.
No, you weren't. I would have pulled you up on it, Councillor.
Look, I rise to speak against this, but I just wanted to speak because I just want to clarify it's not for the reasons that Councillor Bolton is speaking against it. I am speaking against it because I actually concur with a lot of what the councillors have said. This is not about at all, in any way, shape or form, reducing people's democratic right to speak. In fact, more people will get to speak, which is fantastic. I just rise to speak against it because I look at data when I make decisions, and in fact, the average question length that people ask questions is actually 1 minute, not 2, not 3, 1. That is what the length of time that the average person, the median person, asks their questions, and because of that, I think we should move it to 1 minute. I also not sure about this $5,000 inclusion that Councillor Riley is, or Councillor Boone and Riley have put in. I think that's just going to have more unnecessary reports. The council has already heaps of reports and plenty of reports on the council agenda. We don't need any more. If it's stuff that the CEO and the directors can deal with, it's already in the council action plan. So for those reasons, I'm voting against, but overall very supportive of the other clean-up actions that have taken place in here.
Thank you, Councillor Farnley. Did you want to speak, Councillor?
Who moved this item again?
The mover was Councillor Boo.
Who was it? Because
The
I've actually
seconder was
forgotten
Councillor
who seconded, because we spent about 15 minutes on discussing why we should shorten time. Can I put it to can I ask that we put it to the vote, but can I just congratulate who moved it?
I did.
Councillor
Well
Boo.
done. Because it does go on, and I reckon we should perhaps consider shortening
So you're
our
moving
time.
a procedural putting the
No,
motion?
no, I'm not.
No.
I'm
Okay.
agreeing with what Councillor Bush
All right,
before.
okay.
But I'm just saying, I think it's a good motion. Sorry, good item, because it does drag on. So can I ask that we put it to the vote? Now I'll move that Mr. Mayor. If I may.
Okay, well, hang on. I have a procedural motion that the motion be put, all right, now. So I need to put that motion, okay, remembering that the mover hasn't had a chance to speak. All those in favour of the procedural motion that the motion be put? All those against? Oh,
We'll put it again.
sorry, I don't think everyone. Those in favour of the procedural motion again, sorry. Those against the procedural motion? Sue, have you abstaining, are you? Yeah. Okay. Do I get a casting vote on the procedural motion?
It's lost.
No,
It's
it's
lost.
lost.
No, it's lost.
No, it's 5-5.
No,
it's lost. It's lost.
It's 6-4.
Is it? Okay. Are you right? Okay, I'm lost. Okay. So it's.
Let it close it. It's fine.
Oh, okay.
Where
Sorry.
would we be without the gallery? That's the first thing I'd like to say. The second thing that I'd like to say is this is actually not a joke. The meeting procedural stuff is really important. It governs the way we run our meetings. You know, if I had lost the right to say anything just then, they're the rules. That's what it is. You put the motion. If you hadn't been successful, that's just all there is to it. Now, with regard to the timing, I received the data that Councillor O'Farnley recorded a couple of meetings ago, or last meeting, and it was quite valuable to me because most of the people did speak for less than a minute. So I think that limiting the talking time to 2 minutes is perfectly reasonable. The people who did speak for longer than 2 minutes, well, one of them I'd sent in to ask a question. Why don't you go to the gallery and ask a question, which has been done many times before. So he was encouraged to come along, not stopped from coming along. And the second one, we had all received and have done many, many times, pages and pages of background to the question that was put outside that 2 minute period. Now, I want to alert you to this. We heard this evening about the Merri Creek Bridge, something we are all very well aware of, and someone is putting their position and we've accepted that and allowed them to come in and talk about it. We heard about the special rate charges scheme, which we knew was coming. We've all read the agenda. We heard about the issues around the public land sale by the state government up in the Greenbelt in the top end of the city, Fawkner. We heard about, anyway, you get the gist. Everything that was brought to us in questions this evening were questions that we either knew they were coming or there was nothing out of the ordinary that no one knew anything about. A couple of meetings ago, there was a guy that presented who was back again today and the last meeting. So he's been here 3 times. He's been encouraged. He's met with officers outside. He presented his petition, which was received. And the night that he came the first time and no one knew what he was about or where he'd come from, we accepted his question and we are still resolving that issue for him. I completely reject the notion that I'm personally not someone who is accessible or responds to contact, because you kind of actually can't shut me up. And I think sometimes we race to reply to people's emails out of the city if there are issues to resolve. So I have absolutely no qualms with the idea of 2 minutes. And I think that the meeting procedural local law work is super, super important as to govern the way that we function in this place. So I have no qualms about this motion either.
Okay, with that closes the debate, quite a long debate, and we'll put it to the vote now. All those in favour of the substantive motion? All those against? And to declare... Okay, we've called for a division. So once again, councillors, all those that are in favour, could you raise your hand? Councillor Ziordiz, Tapanos, Councillor Riley, Councillor Martin, Councillor Kavanagh, Councillor Abood, Councillor Dorney, Councillor Davidson, Councillor Carly Hammond, and all those against, could they raise their hand? Yeah. So it's just 2 against, Councillor Farnley and Councillor Bolton, and everyone else in favour. Farnley and Bolton. Thank you. Thank you, councillors, for that spirited debate. We move on to DCS 2618, Statutory Requirement Procurement Policy Annual Review. And Councillor Martin is on his feet.
Thank you. I'd like to move a slightly amended recommendation from the officers, which I'm happy to speak to. It's probably best if I do get a second. I have circulated it around to councillors earlier.
Okay. All right. Anyone happy to second that? All right, Councillor Riley.
So I've sent it around a little bit earlier today. So in essence, for those that don't know, I am borderline obsessed with procurement, and our ability to actually influence the market, because council is a large purchaser of goods and services within the city. And one of the things that you have is if you're an everyday resident and you go to buy your food, you can choose where you spend that money. And that actually has a huge impact on the supply chain, and it has a huge impact on our environmental, our social, and our economic choices for the city. So one of the things that I'm really passionate about, and some of the amendments that I've made in here, is to really lock in essentially what is triple bottom line procurement. And I would like to also mention, I would like to thank the officers for doing this work. The policy is much better this time around. It really encapsulates where we would like to be as a council and where we're going. And all my amendments are doing here is really locking in, emphasising the social sustainability, environmental sustainability and the economic sustainability factors, and really making sure that throughout the procurement process, they're not bundled into one little tiny thing at the bottom of the page that is an afterthought. It really brings them forward to the forefront of all of our procurement work, our templates, our tenders, our documentation. What it does is it puts these elements right at the forefront and will really enable some of the things like when we're building roads to look for recycled products, to really look for local employment opportunities, to look to social employment opportunities, really bringing that in and encapsulating that all in a policy. So I would like to thank the officers for the work that they've done in improving the policies to begin with. I hope that councillors support my amendments to that policy. And I would like to also flag that this is the start of an ongoing process. What you have here can be improved upon, and I think it is an element of trial and error as a council as we move forward. So I really do also encourage people to have a read of it if you are interested in this sort of stuff, because your purchasing power is really important.
Thank you. Councillor Riley, did you want to speak to it?
Thank you. I just want to commend Councillor Martin for his work in this area. Really, and also the rigour and the sort of discussions that we've had as councillors and with officers around this, because some of these things are not easy to deal with at times. And I just want to commend Councillor Martin for the depth and the sort of focus that he can bring to some of these topics that we have to deal with as councillors. So it makes me a better councillor, and I'm hoping it makes my fellow councillors better councillors because of it. We were looking to try and lock this in as one of the sort of give it a percentage in terms of the way, if anyone understands how procurement's done, there's a whole set of criteria and they're given weighting percentage-wise, and we were looking to do that, but we received advice that that's not always going to work and it's not a good way to do that. And I think that this amendment is actually a good compromise. It's getting these ideas of environmental sustainability, social sustainability and economic sustainability right down through the documentation so that it's always at the forefront of the assessors' minds. And I know that they take these issues, our officers and our workers take these issues very seriously, and they are in the principles and the objectives of the whole thing. But I just want to commend this to councillors as a really good compromise way of actually seeing that we have it right through the culture of procurement because of the nature of it, because of the dollars we're dealing with. You're looking at what we're spending on our aquatics and what we're spending at Oak Park. That's not small money, and it's important for our community that we spend it well, and we try and make sure that we're spending it not just for this generation, but for future generations, which is what these three elements are about, trying to get it right, so that we're not sending our waste offshore to China. We're actually trying to deal with our own waste here in Moreland, in Melbourne, in Victoria and Australia, in a way that actually means that we actually have to suck it up and deal with it and pay for it out of our own hip pocket if it means doing the right thing environmentally, socially and economically. So I'm hoping people will support that.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Any further discussion on this? Being no further discussion, I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare this carried.
I'm going to vote against. I don't see the point because we already do all of this anyway.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
just.
Yeah, that's
Sorry,
fine.
just a bit
Just a
late.
bit slow. That's fine. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification, Councillor Bolton. Right. Now, DCS 2718, Council Action Plan Item, Customer Service Strategy. Do you have a mover? Councillor Aboud, are you moving the officer recommendation? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Dorney, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, I would. Just very briefly, I was at the Disability Working Group meeting at midday today, and I just wanted to report back something that has been noted with regard to this strategy and this council action plan item, that the Disability Working Group has identified that it has an important role to play in helping the strategy to better understand our customers, which is point one of the strategy's key themes. The group has experienced reporting some very unique issues with regard to a very broad range of disabilities. So I'm looking forward to them being able to have, the Disability Working Group being able to have some feedback into the way that we can achieve this goal of the Council Action Plan.
Thank you. Councillor Dorney?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I think this is a great strategy. I can't fault it. I think that we're always striving to do better. And although our customer satisfaction is quite high when looking at actually benchmarking that against other councils, I'm excited for this work moving forward and continual improvement.
Thank you, Councillor Dorney. Is there any discussion, any councillors voting against, speaking against? If there's no one speaking against, I'm going to put this to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Okay. DCS 2818, response to general business item, council owned land between 71 and 73 Winifred Street in Oak Park. Do I have a mover?
Yeah, I'll move that.
Yeah. Councillor Farley, just to check, are you moving in the space there on point 2, Councillor Cabinet, a chair, and Councillor Davidson and Carly Hannon to be in that?
That's exactly what I was about to move. Yeah.
Sorry, just call me Jerry G. Okay. Your lips didn't even move. It was incredible. Yep. Councillor Harley, Councillor Farnley, do you have a second to Councillor Farnley's motion? Councillor Yildiz. Okay. Any speaking to that, Councillor Farnley?
Oh, okay.
Councillor Yildiz. Good. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, against, declare that carried. Well done. All right. DCS 2918, proposed sale of surplus Crown land, unreserved Crown allotment to 2030, Brunswick West, rear of...
Oh, sorry, no.
No, rear of 6 Curtin Avenue. Do we have a mover for that report? Councillors, I haven't got a mover at the moment. Good. Okay, Councillor Yildiz. Do I have a second to that report? Yeah. Anyone seconding? I'll second for that. Councillor Riley, thank you. Okay. Any discussion, Councillor? Councillor Riley? Okay. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against, declare that carried. Thank you. DCI 1318, we're on city infrastructure. Proposed Merri Creek Bridge at Kingfisher Gardens near Ceres. Councillor Dorney, are you moving it? And do we have a seconder? Councillor Tapanos. That's all you. Councillor Dorney, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, I would. I'd like to move officer recommendations. I think, and also just thank the tireless work of the community in advocating and lobbying for this bridge. 10 years in the making, I think that's huge and something that you should really be celebrated. I'm sure you're going to crack open the champagne or non-alcoholic champagne later this evening. It's a fantastic piece of infrastructure and a great demonstration of partnership between councils to improve the safety and accessibility of people walking and wheeling across municipalities, and also encouraging more people to do so. I look forward to walking on this bridge once construction is complete, I believe, or starts in August 2019.
Can I advise it's probably better to walk on it when it's completed, not when it's started?
I'll make sure I wait till it's completed. But yeah, I think it's a great piece of work and I look forward to it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dorney. Councillor Tapanos?
Yes, this is a very exciting project, and it's great to see after all of these discussions that we had in the chamber, particularly around budget time and the priorities, we have been able to find the money. And I must also pay credit to our CEO for being able to create the mechanism, and that is the bridge funds, effectively, to be able to collect some money over a couple of budget cycles to be able to invest in these bridges and other bridges which I know are coming into the future. So it is very exciting. I know it's going to be well utilised by a lot of kids crossing in both directions to go to and from school, and also people to visit our beautiful series environmental park as well. So it is something that I think is going to be well utilised and very much appreciated by the community in both Darebin and Moreland. And it would be amiss of me not to note that Darebin is putting half the bill. It is a shared project with them, and that's another example of good cooperation between municipalities, neighbouring municipalities, to get stuff done for their communities.
Thank you. If there's no speakers again, would you like to speak? I'll let you speak.
A couple of things. I think this has been quite impressive work by the local community, because it's a difficult thing to just take on one council and convince one council to take up a project, but to actually take on two councils is a huge thing. And I think even when this was first proposed on Moreland, there was some councillors are a bit, nervous about such a big cost and blah, blah, blah. But it really is a very vital project. I mean, it'd be great for recreation, but I think, especially for the safety of kids, I think is the most critical thing. But the recreation is a bonus. But to actually take on two councils and win, that's actually quite a really fantastic effort.
Yep, excellent. Okay, I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against, declare that carried. Unanimous? Yep. Oh, there we go. And there's a clapping in the public gallery. Terrific. Wonderful. Yep. And unanimous? Can you recall those unanimous? Okay. All right. We have DCI 1418, Council Action Plan item, compost community trial.
I go.
Moving the officer recommendation.
With a very slight amendment.
Yes.
An additional point.
Yep.
Let me just find it here, sorry.
It's coming up, I think, on the screen. Promote share waste, is that it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I would like to add a second point that reads...
It's on the screen.
Promotes share waste and conducts a concerted communication strategy with regular and more frequent messaging via our social media networks to promote both programs.
Okay, excellent. All right, do we have a second to that? Councillor Dorney, would like to speak to it?
Yes, I would. The compost trials, I'm glad they're happening. I think they're going to, go ahead in leaps and bounds with the stuff that's going on. But I think that promoting the share waste is a good idea, because there's actually this big network. Yeah, Google it, Mr. Dolby. There's a big network of people who have been connected on a big map with people who have compost to give away and people who are happy to receive it, which I didn't know anything about until quite recently. And I think that now is a good time to shine a light on the effectiveness of our communications team. And especially if you look back on what happened with the Give Glenroy a Go campaign and several other campaigns that have been run recently in the city, I think that that's a resource that's worth really tapping into, that people respond to. It's quite remarkable to see those communication updates every month to see what people are responding to in the city. And I think that both the share waste and the fact that we're doing our compost community program, as someone who was loosely involved with the food system strategy, I do get contacted quite regularly about opportunities for compost, and I think that that's another area where we're really just about to, step off the precipice and dive into the water, and it's going to be great.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Dorney as a seconder, would you like to speak to it?
I wholly support composting and any opportunity to encourage our community to do so. I'm an avid and obsessive composter at home, and that, along with the need for the fact that we've actually committed zero waste to landfill by 2030, we need to spread this far and wide and get this message out in every way, shape and form that we can. And I think that the trials, in order to make sure that we do this right, are important. And this just is another piece of work along with many more that need to happen in the future, and one that's we're also starting a green waste collection in September, I believe it is, and really looking forward to that also shaping how we transition Moreland away from putting our waste into landfill and actually reusing our resources instead.
Thank you, Councillor Dorney. Councillor Martin, just speak to it.
Just quickly, and I really want to emphasise the fact that composting and this composting community program is of financial benefit to ratepayers. And it's one of the things that we can sit around and talk about all the great environmental benefits of composting. But at the moment, you're looking at 40 to 50% of green waste going in your landfill bin. Now, we pay for that landfill we pay for that waste to go to landfill. What this does is it takes waste out of landfill and disposes of it in another way, in which is not only environmentally beneficial, but then we're not sending as much to landfill and it's actually cheaper for the ratepayers. So I really do want to emphasise that fact because it is often overlooked and it is sort of considered this sort of environmental thing, but it does have financial benefit.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to speak, Councillor? No, okay, good. Well, with no further discussion, I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. We move on to DCI 1518, Council Action Plan item, Public Place Recycling Trial Update. You're moving it, Councillor Martin? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Moved by Councillor Martin, and you're moving the officer recommendation? Yep. And seconded by? Yep, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Martin, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, just briefly. I mean, we are, as a council, I know we are all really looking forward to this trial, taking place and actually happening. It is something that a lot of people have noticed that there is a lack of recycling bins in some of our activity centres. What this trial is going to do is give us the information that we need to really either roll it out and also trial different education campaigns with that. I also should note that I'm really looking forward to the other items that we have under this council action plan item, and that is also looking at things like soft plastic recycling at certain centres in the municipality. I think that'll also be really beneficial to residents. So I'm really looking forward to this work happening, and I really do think that it is much needed.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bolton, did you want to speak to it?
No, it's all good.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. And we've got DCI 1618, Contract 704T, Road Reconstruction at Marsden Avenue, Wadham Street, and we're at Winona Grove in Pascoe Vale South. You're moving it, Councillor Riley, the officer recommendation. And you have a seconder? Yep, good. Councillor Yildiz. Any discussion?
Just to move the officers' report, I want to commend the officers for the work on this. I mean, these are kind of pedestrian, if I could say that about some roadworks, but it is important. There's a lot of money that's invested in this, and clearly some procurement interests and lenses are thrown over this as well. So as one of the councillors responsible for infrastructure, I just want to commend the officers' report recommendations.
Councillor Yildiz? No, that's right. Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll put the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Now, they're the council officers' reports. Councillors, we now move on to notices of motion. And so, councillors, I ask that you start by stating the motion, and then we'll get a seconder, and then you may speak to it after that. Okay, so notice of motion 1918 is support for Inyet and Jobs for Youth campaign, and that notice of motion has been put by Councillor Abood. Do we have a seconder to Councillor Abood's motion? Councillor Riley. Now, Councillor Abood, you may speak to it.
I'd like to just add a very slight amendment
Yes,
that says
okay.
for the period of 1 year.
For the period of 1 year, and that's just checking you're still happy to second that, Councillor Riley. So, okay. All right, thank you for that. And Councillor Abood, would you like to speak to it?
Yep. So this is one of those scenarios where I forgot to step back and I accidentally stepped forward. So I found myself on the Inner Northern Youth Employment Network, which is a partnership of a bunch of dynamic people, including representatives from various councils, Yarra, Darebin and Moreland, people, stakeholders who have a focus on ensuring that young people in the community are being given the best opportunity to go into pathways that would lead them to full-time employment. There's a bunch of really important research being done, including the fact that experience with job interviews and part-time work leads to, through high school, leads to a greater rate of employment outside of school and also shorter periods of unemployment going forward. And so I am really glad that I stepped forward instead of stepping back, and I have really enjoyed being involved in this group. But the INYET network is, like all of these kind of groups, always struggling for cash. And I think that for the Moreland City Council to put up $10,000 as a one-off to support their work is in the best interest of the city, and also in the best interest of the young people on a more broader scale as well. And as one of the councillors responsible for youth, I find this a no-brainer. So I hope you'll support me.
Okay, Councillor Riley.
I wasn't going to, but I just feel I need to as a teacher and somebody who works with young people, and the changing nature of work at the moment. I just believe that this is a really important thing to do. Some people are not always blessed with that sort of instinct and inner knowledge about what they want to do in their work careers, and I just think getting experience and offering people these opportunities so they can reach their full potential is really important. So I just commend Councillor Wood for putting this motion up.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. Is there any further discussion? Okay, being no further discussion, I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Now, the next notice of motion is notice of motion 2018, support for the return of season of Serenading Adela, and that's been put forward by me. Just move a slightly different amendment to the one before us. In point 4, if we just remove "and concert hall rooms," because I believe that the organisers don't need the concert hall rooms for a bump out the following day, and that's the only. And I'd like to move that amendment, and if I have a seconder, I'll speak to it. Councillor Bolton. And thank you, Councillor Bolton, for seconding. Look, councillors, I encourage you to support this motion. Councillor Bolton and myself attended in January the 7th this year at Pentridge, which was the most outstanding night. It was absolutely incredible. I think it's probably the best capacity building thing I've seen in my time on council in the 14 years. It was just amazing and an incredible credit to the organisers, and I know some of them in the audience, Susie and Nancy and Mick, and congratulations on that. I think this is a correct process to have a notice of motion, because I realise that the group has received support in the past, but I do think this is quite exceptional, and I do think it should be worthy of councillor support. Fortunately, the 100th anniversary of the First World War only happens once, and they had to turn away many people who wanted to see the show, and I think the show was just of the highest calibre, with so many people, faces of Moreland involved. It was just terrific to see, to be honest, including Saskia Hunter, who was in the Angry Mob, and did that very well, and I've credited and told her that on a number of occasions, how wonderful she was in that performance. But it was just terrific. No matter where you turned around, there were people who attend council meetings, there were people you see walking down Sydney Road. It was just magnificent. And so I encourage you to support this motion. Councillor Bolton, would you like to speak to it?
Yes, I would like to speak to it. I mean, I think I totally agree. The event was fantastic, and there have been a lot of calls for repeat performances, which is why this proposal's come to the council tonight. It's, certainly the genesis of this was drawing attention to the anniversary of the part of the First World War that doesn't get spoken about, the anti-conscription, anti-war movement, which is, really the mainstream is very silent about that whole part of our history, which was an incredibly important part. I think I gather some councillors have raised questions about the financial side of this, but I think the section of the council's policy about not free or discounted use not being provided for community groups that already receive financial support from the council. I mean, I think that, it probably is fair enough for some groups that might get some sort of ongoing support from council. But I think in this case, this is sort of like, in a sense, came together as an ad hoc community group. It's not like some ongoing NGO that's got some sort of source of ongoing funding or subscription base or something to fund itself. It is a group of volunteers who've come together. They don't have lease agreements with the council and all of these other sorts of financial interminglings with the council. It is purely a group of individuals who've come together of their own free time, and it was spectacularly successful with long queues around Pentridge in January when this event happened. I think this has actually drawn a lot of attention to Moreland and Coburg and the historic Pentridge site, which is vanishing before our eyes. So I think it was, I have no hesitation in supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that unanimous. Congratulations, ladies. Yeah, excellent. Yes, and Nick was there too. I don't think I had to say that. I don't think there's a bench in Moreland that Nick's, I don't think it's allowed to go ahead without Nick's present. Okay, we've got notice of motion 2118, Product Stewardship Act 2011 review, and we have Councillor Martin's motion. Is it as it's written in the agenda, Councillor?
It is as it's written in the agenda.
Okay, so we'll just see if we get a second to that. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bolton. Okay, and you're free to talk to it, Councillor.
Thank you. So what I would like to do to start with is I would like every person in the gallery, every person watching at home to get onto Google and type in product stewardship and read about what it is, because this is so incredibly important in our country at a time when we are having waste recycling crisis. We're having all of these pressures put on local government to clean up products which we should have gotten rid of a long time ago. What this act does is it sits at a federal level. So this is federal legislation. So one thing I would love to do is to get all the federal politicians into a room and explain to them that waste is not just a local government issue, but it is also a federal government issue. What this does is it looks at some of the things like microbeads, which we have at the moment. There's currently a voluntary scheme in place. There's also voluntary schemes on a range of different things like mobile phones through the Mobile Muster program, some of the televisions, some of the e-waste. It's all voluntary. We have a packaging covenant. It's voluntary. If the government actually wants to be serious at tackling the waste crisis, which we're in at the moment, we need every single resident, we need councils, we need people right across the country to make submissions and tell the government that we want to mandate these things. There are products in this country that are sold which you cannot recycle if you wanted to. And it is absolutely ridiculous that this falls on councils time and time again to dispose of. And it's something that manufacturers, importers, packaging companies need to take responsibility for the waste that they create, and it needs to be in the form of product stewardship. So I really do encourage my fellow councillors to adopt this. So I'm talking about some of the things like the Australasian recycling labelling system, improving and mandating the packaging covenant, and also, mandating all these problematic waste streams that we see. Polystyrene, for example, is one of those ones that you see in waterways. It is polluted everywhere. You can only recycle polystyrene if it is perfectly clean. And it is absolutely ridiculous that we're still using products like that. We're still using microbeads. That these things are still happening when there are so many alternatives available. So I really do encourage everyone to make a submission to this, and I really do hope that our submission is really robust. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Bolton as a seconder?
Yes, I'd like to second this because I think at last there's something which is putting, or motion that's trying to put some pressure on the companies that produce the stuff, because far too often all the blame goes to the individual at the bottom of the chain, the individual consumer. But the reality is when you walk into a shop, the decision about what you're going to buy has already been made for you by companies will, you know, provide you with this choice or that choice. But in reality, they've decided what you'll buy. And so ordinary people have no say over the packaging and so forth. And sometimes the blame is put on ordinary people rather than the producers of the rubbish. So I think this is a really good move. I mean, I think if you're going to try and deal with this issue, there's certain things that should just simply be banned, like chlorofluorocarbons were banned. There was an international agreement that took them out. So all of this voluntary stuff by of retailers and producers and so forth, I mean, the profit motive gets in the road. They pass the buck onto us, and in some ways recycling has relieved them of some pressures because they think, oh, we'll keep producing stuff and they'll keep getting recycled rather than stopping producing the packaging. So I think we obviously need behaviour change at our level, but we also need pressure on the manufacturers and retailers.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Is there any further discussion on this item? Being no further discussion, I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare this carried. Next notice motion is notice motion 2218, Spark 2018. It's also Councillor Martin's motion. Is it as it's printed on the agenda?
It as it's printed. There's also a comma that needs to be included in the motion too, but that's just a grammatical change.
Okay, I'll just wait for a seconder. Do we have a seconder to Spark 2018? Seconded by Councillor Abood. You're welcome to speak to it now, Councillor Martin.
Thank you. So the reason why this is coming before council is because due to, just like the serenading Adela, not-for-profits and community groups can't receive, they can't allow councillors to waive the fees for hall hire if they're already receiving money from council. Obviously, we have an ongoing arrangement with the Moreland Energy Foundation for delivery of the zero carbon evolution strategy. And so what this is actually asking for is to waive the fee hall hire for Brunswick Town Hall on the 20th and the 21st of September. And I know that the 20th being my birthday, I'll be spending the entire day at the Spark conference because I couldn't think of anything better than spending the day there. It is a fantastic conference. It was a huge success last time around. And I noted in the background that it is focusing on two distinct streams this year. One is centred on community and the other one is centred on industry. So I really do encourage councillors to support this motion, and I really do encourage everyone to put that date in your diary for the 20th and 21st of September. Thanks.
Okay. Do we have Councillor Abood as a seconder? Would you like to speak to it?
Just to say that I'll bring some cake.
Any further discussion? You did mention you were borderline. I would think I'd get rid of the word borderline. Okay, all right, no worries. Okay, good. Okay, no further discussion. We'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Notice of motion 2318, Everybody's Home campaign, and this is a notice of motion of Councillor Riley. Councillor Riley, it's as it's printed in the agenda, is it? Yeah. Do we have a seconder to Councillor? Councillor Bolton is seconding, and you may speak to it, Councillor Riley.
Thank you. This Everybody's Home campaign is a national campaign, as the background to this motion outlines. It's a way of, it has 5 themes, which is supporting first home buyers. It's working towards a national housing strategy to allow low-cost properties and more choices in the housing market. It's working to get a better deal for renters and stopping people from being evicted without having real grounds and having unfair rent rises. And it's providing rental stress relief for people who are having chronic rental stress as well through the an increase in the Commonwealth rent assistance, which has already been mentioned tonight in one of the other debates earlier. for many thousands of Australians, this is a really important way to make ends meet if they're receiving statutory incomes. And fifthly, to plan to end homelessness by 2030. And this is going to go some way to doing that by trying to halve homelessness in 5 years and end it in 10. So it's got a big agenda, but there are many agencies across Australia that are working behind this, and the motion is actually just asking Council to commit to being a campaign partner for it, and that we do the usual writing to the PM and the Leader of the Opposition and the Member for Wills, and that we also promote it through our Council communications. I think it's very much aligned with the kind of work we've been doing in the affordable housing stream, and in fact it was our affordable housing committee that advocated this, and it's the first time in my knowledge that I've seen, at least in the time I've been involved with the committee, where they've actually put something through that's come through to Council. So I'm very pleased to move this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Councillor Bolton, would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, possibly I don't need to, because I think Councillor Riley said it all. I guess it just maybe draw attention to a couple of points of this plan is for getting rid of no grounds evictions and unfair rent rises. So this is something going through a number of different elements, not only the need to build more social housing, although I would say public housing, but it also talks about every different category of people who need to live, whether people are home buyers or renters or need social housing or public housing, and people who are homeless. So it's got proposals for each one of these things. I mean, I actually think all of this stuff can be done because Australia is a wealthy enough country. It's a question of actual political will at all different levels of government.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Any further discussion? Being no further discussion, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against, declare that carried. Councillor Riley, you've got notice of motion 2418, United Nations Compact on Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration. As it's printed in, is it?
There's an amendment.
Okay, so I'll get you to just read that amendment so we're clear.
Sorry. Shane, have you received an amendment?
So it's at a point 2, is it?
It's actually had 3 points and it's got an
point
additional 4th point, which is,
okay.
Yes, thank you, it's up there on the screen. So I'll just read the motion actually just quickly, which is the following consultation with the Human Rights Committee, that we join with other cities around the world to sign the United Nations Compact on Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration. And this process is a UN process which will finalise in December of this year. And I just think that it's the first time that the world has actually tried to come to some sort of an agreement around all the different types of migration, including people who are seeking refuge and asylum, as well as this regular migration for other travel, pleasure, work and other economic forms of migration. So it's a really important piece of work in that respect. It also the motion also seeks to update our commitment to the Refugee Council's refugee welcome zones and our work around that, as well as becoming a signatory to the With Refugees Solidarity Statement as proposed by the Refugee Council.
You've got Councillor Aboud as a seconder, so
Thank you,
keep
sorry.
going. Okay.
And then finally, this addition, which has been proposed by work that Councillor Aboud's been doing, is to advocate to the federal government to include the Member for Wills and Victorian senators to improve and expand the refugee community's sponsorship program, to ensure the program A, provides sufficient places for people in need of refugee protection to settle in Australia with adequate support and services, B, caters to all refugees in need and not simply targeting some through restrictive eligibility criteria, and C, finally, places clear limits to the costs sponsors should cover and allows community, family and businesses to act as sponsors. So just to wrap that up, these are changes that are coming through on the 1st of July, which are going to really impact on many people who are living on temporary visas in Australia. So this is a super nomination in a way. It kind of grew legs and actually had some arms at it as well. But given that Refugee Week is coming up, I thought it was really important that we try to get as many elements of this in there. It's not going to cost council a lot, but given our embracing of diversity and cultures and trying to support all of these people who are coming to our city, whether they are wealthy or not, we do want to be able to accommodate people at the lower end of the spectrum, and that's where the emphasis in this is on refugees. So I really commend this motion to councillors.
Thank you, Councillor O'Reilly. Councillor Abood is the seconder. Would you like to speak to it?
Just very briefly, I'd like to commend Councillor O'Reilly on the motion and for allowing all the additional point. And I'd also like to say thank you to a man called Shankar who made a visit down from Canberra to Melbourne and got his act together to ask to meet, and I went and met with him, just to have a conversation about the Amnesty International campaign, just to encourage the government to make sure that it's really extended this community sponsorship program so that it can function successfully and not use it as a way to, tick off numbers as we get to our quota of people who've come through the gates. I think that Moreland City Council really needs to, walk the talk as well as just having signs on top of the building. We need to make sure that we're acting to advocate for these people who are refugees. They're not, choosing a better life like my in-laws did. They're being forced out of their homes from situations that we can't even imagine, let alone appreciate. And it's really important that they get a lot of support. I'd also like to commend the Whittlesea Council that passed a very similar motion about a week and a half ago.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. Councillor Bolton, you'd like to speak to it, would you?
I'd like to add an amendment, if it was acceptable to the mover and seconder, that there be a Part D to, 4.D, I think. It's a bit hard to read the numbering up there.
You're right, yes.
That all of the refugees on Manus and Nauru be brought to Australia.
I'm not sure of the context.
I'll ask the mover first.
Oh, sorry.
I thought, well, it's sort of talking about certain things of providing sufficient places for people in need of refugee protection to settle in Australia with adequate support and services. So because of that bit, point A, I thought then bringing, because that is a call on the federal government rather than the council. So okay. I would think that would
understand
fit totally.
I'm happy to accept the amendment, but I'm just wondering if we could vote on it separately. In terms of, I'm more than happy to support this motion. I've got no objection to it.
Okay, but if so, you need to either accept it as.
I'm happy to accept it.
Okay, it becomes a substantive then at that point, if it's also acceptable to the second.
I'm just wondering where it fits, because 1, 2, 3, and then a fourth point with A, B, and C. But the A, B, and C speak specifically to the community sponsorship program.
Okay,
so potentially it's actually a 0.5.
0.5.
Okay.
Would you make it a 0.5?
Yeah.
If you make it a 0.5?
Yeah, I'm happy
you're
with
okay if she makes it a 0.5, and you're okay on that if it's 0.5?
Yeah, I was just confused.
Okay, good. Then that becomes a substantive motion. All right, councillors, we're going to put it to the vote.
Hang on, I'm a bit confused. So if you remove it from that 0.4, then it's got to be linked to an advocacy of a letter of some sort, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a separate 0.5.
Okay, because I misread it was a bit difficult.
To the federal government.
Yeah.
We advocate.
We advocate for all refugees.
Is that in
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a suggestion from the CEO.
And be resettled rather than settled, I think.
Okay,
so
we're going to go CEO.
Just through the mayor.
Hang on. We're going to go through. We're going to hear from the CEO.
So, just through the mayor, if that's okay.
Sorry, no discussion.
Sorry.
Sorry, councillor, stop. We're going to listen, please.
I just want to offer another way that you can frame that. So, it's going to be important to say what the action is that you want us to take. So that council advocates via writing or, the action, that or refugees, etc., because, we can't actually move the refugees ourselves, and also you need to say what you mean by advocate, because that could be this or this.
Okay. Well, that also probably applies to point 4 then, because it doesn't say what sort of advocacy So anyway, okay, well maybe if we just simply say that council advocates by writing to the federal government or the,
Okay,
That would be enough to do it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
And we probably need to do that in point 4 as well.
It's actually implied. It's implied because it's. Yeah, I think we took it as by writing, but we can make it clearer.
All right, okay. All right, okay, councillors, yeah, hold it together, please. Okay, all right. That's still acceptable, I gather? That's acceptable, the seconder. Okay, we're going to put it to the vote. All those in favour? Against, declare that carried.
We have a division, thank you.
No, okay, so there was a division, was there? Okay, so we had a division called. Those that voted in favour, can they raise their hand, please? Those in favour? Councillor Udis, you're in favour? So am I correct that it's everyone other than Councillor Farnley? Yes. Yeah, everyone's in favour other than Councillor Farnley, who's against.
I did.
Okay, thank you. All right. Notice of motion 2518. We're not going to deal with that tonight because it's part of the budget process, and so that's been withdrawn, and so we move on now, and that will be dealt with on the budget night when we look at our budget. So we move now to notice of motion 2618, affordable housing. That's Councillor Bolton is the mover, and is it different to what's in the agenda?
It's different to what's in the agenda.
Okay, all
I
right.
sent around a compromise motion.
Fine. Okay. Would you like to read that for us, Councillor Bolton?
So the motion reads, and let me know if you need me to resend it to you at all. So the motion reads, while recognising the seriousness of the housing affordability crisis confronting, do you want me to stop and resend it to you?
Oh, this looks good.
Last night, yeah. While recognising the seriousness of the housing affordability crisis confronting many in the Moreland community and acknowledging the recent establishment of Moreland Affordable Housing Limited, that Council prepare a report update to outline 1, additional parcels of council-owned land that may provide opportunities for other affordable housing initiatives, and 2, identifies any underutilised state government-owned land that could be suitable for public or social housing projects by the Victorian Government, which Council could then advocate towards.
Okay, that's moved by Councillor Bolton and seconded by you, Councillor Riley, right? So you've got a seconder, so you may speak to it, Councillor.
So my reason for moving this is because there is a real crisis, and I would say emergency situation. Now, Council is already doing a certain amount on the affordable housing front. I mean, we've been certainly advocating that the public housing estates be kept and maintained rather than demolished, and we've also set up the Moreland Affordable Housing Limited, a land trust, with a view to partnership projects which can build affordable housing. And some sites have been identified by council officers, and most of the sites tend to be ones which are above car parks. But I believe there are some other pockets of land in Moreland that should be considered given the scale of the crisis. And the scale of the crisis is that in the March 2018 rent report, only 1.7% of dwellings are affordable in Moreland, with only 0.7% of one-bedroom flats being affordable. And that the definition of affordable nowadays is actually pretty unaffordable for anyone who's on a minimum wage or any kind of New Start or pension or whatever. So we actually do have a national emergency on our hands in terms of housing affordability. We know that council can't resolve the issues by ourselves, but I believe there are some other pockets of land, including within the Coburg Activity Centre, that could be looked at, and also there are vacant state government blocks of land, and two that spring to mind. There may be others, maybe more suitable, but two that spring to mind would be the two abandoned Kangan Batman TAFE colleges, one in the Grove and the other one in North Coburg, but there might be other sites as well. I think we should, we need to put it to the state government that they need to be converting some of their abandoned sites and converted into preferably public housing. rather than community housing association housing. So I certainly I think it's a practical motion, and because we're in an emergency situation.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Riley.
Yeah, just briefly, Councillor Bolton and I are on the Housing Advisory Committee, so I'm happy to second this. But I do, the context for those who've read it will realise that we've just, and I would have actually a bit remiss in not mentioning this when we had council reports earlier, that after my comment at the last meeting that we were waiting on the state government to give the big tick for our More Than Affordable Housing Limited to take effect, it's actually happened in the last fortnight. So I want to just acknowledge that the state government's finally done something after we waited 5 months. I'm not sure why it took that long, but as we say, it's actually on the way, and I'm very pleased about that. I just wanted to reiterate that we've already done a huge amount of work to get the Housing Trust ready, to get it rolling, and many of the concerns Councillor Bolton's just expressed have been around for a long time. So we're already doing the work. We already have done a lot of the work, and I'm hoping that once we get a chairperson appointed and a board appointed to this trust, we can actually get on with the work, because there's actually officers have prepared a lot of work to roll out, and it's a really important initiative. It's not something other councils have taken the effort to do, and I'm hoping that we can actually show that Moreland are leading the way again, not just in things like sustainability and social measures, but also in terms of this kind of affordability issue. So I just wanted to just really clarify that in this debate, because we are actually asking for another report, but it's based on really refreshing a lot of the work we've already done. So it's not new work. It will update it, and hopefully it will throw up some new possibilities, as Councillor Bolton has said. So I fully support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. I'm going to put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against, declare that carried. You want a division? Yes. Right. We've called, Councillor Booth's called for a division. All those who are in favour? And against? Right, so, oh, well, yeah. Okay. All right. The next notice of motion is notice of motion 2718, Sydney Road Pop-Up Park and Temporary Accessible Tram Stop. And the mover of the motion is Councillor Tapanos. Do you have
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have an alternative to what is listed in the agenda, which is hopefully on screen. I've just updated it recently as well.
Recently, like a minute ago.
That is correct.
At 9:54 p.m.
It's better than in the middle of the debate, I guess. Well, if I have a second, I'll speak to it.
Okay. Well,
let me just read it.
We better get it on the screen first.
I'll read it. The Council endorsed the concept of a trial accessible tram stop and potential park space on Sydney Road, and 2, authorise officers to partner with Revitalise Sydney Road and or advocate for this trial through Vic Road Sydney Road Working Group.
All right, so that's different. Okay, you're seconding, Councillor Yildiz? Righto.
Yes, thank you. So, councillors, this is a great opportunity to trial something different on Sydney Road, to talk and with our community and showcase something that might actually be what the future of Sydney Road looks like. So we know that accessible tram stops are coming. We saw in our municipality not long ago, members of our community advocate for accessible tram stops. We know the success of pop-up parks, of greening spaces, particularly along our transport corridors. And we've seen the success of many pop-up parks. This idea is not mine. It's come from Revitalise Sydney Road, that has a vision for what Sydney Road might look like in the future. But as you will know, over many years, not much has happened on Sydney Road. And there's a good reason for that, because things are complex. Because of the ownership of Sydney Road, it rests with the state government, with big roads, with big trams, and also footpaths with council. It is difficult to do something new, but I would say that this is an opportunity worth taking. I note that the state government has grants available where councils and other organisations can partner to deliver a community project. So what I'm suggesting here tonight is that we set this trial up. It won't cost us any money if we are successful in getting the grant, or if we are successful in working with Vic Roads to ensure that someone else can pay for this. So I'm keeping the options open, but if the grant doesn't come through, but this is something we can advocate for into the future with Vic Roads. Councillors, don't look at the obstacles, look at what might be put in place if we could actually get this up and running. It's always difficult to have change in our city. I think that this idea, which is a good idea, should be supported tonight, and we can have a look at the obstacles and tackle them when they come, because this is going to provide a great opportunity for our community to see what
Time,
the
Councillor,
stops
sorry, I
like.
couldn't see that.
Can I just, as a second, just confirm something?
Yeah.
So is this similar to what we've got down at Nicholson Street in this series? Is that the sort of thing
That
you're
means no cars and
you're proposing can I rescind my
streets will be
Okay,
okay,
all right, I'm with the program. You want to withdraw your second?
Absolutely.
Can I actually...
Okay, councillor, let's keep it together. It's almost...
Yes, no, it's not similar. It is proposing super stops, which is what is at Nicholson.
That's right, councillor, you've had it. We're with the program.
Sorry, I'm not...
Right, so
Super
councillor
stops are
Yildiz is
coming,
withdrawn
councillor.
his seconding. Do we have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Riley is now second. Okay, all right. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Riley?
I would like to commend Councillor Tapanos for taking the initiative on this. I'm glad we don't have to pick a project, because I'm really a bit sceptical about that. But this one I'm much more interested in seeing happen. And what I'd actually like to suggest, although I won't do it tonight, I'll work on a proper motion in sometime in the near future, that we actually advocate the state government to bring these accessible stops forward. I mentioned it earlier tonight, and part of the problem is that they won't commit the money to do the work to get it happening. We've had officers taken up time, we've had Revitalise Sydney Road and all these people in meetings for a year, and they're meant to have started to consult you as residents and citizens of the city last month in May. Well, why aren't they doing it? It's got something to do with a thing called a state election, I believe, and we're probably not going to see any movement on Sydney Road until that's all out of the way. So I think it's very tiring, it's very disappointing, but I really am happy to see that we might try something of this nature, because I do think we need to do something in Sydney Road. It's coming to Nicholson Street soon, although I suspect the Nicholson Street is actually ready to roll. They're supposed to have started, I believe, I was asked the director, they're supposed to start rolling with it as we speak or somewhere about now. But I suspect that's been put on the never because of the state election too. But anyway, when the state election's over, they will actually put super stops all the way down, or accessible stops all the way down Nicholson Street, not just the one at the end of Blythe Street. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm sure people who have mobility issues are really looking forward to it. But I'm looking forward to the time when we actually get Sydney Road happening. That would be great.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Questions as well?
Sorry?
Can we ask questions as well?
I'll let Councillor Boot and then I'll take it
first.
Okay, so I have a bunch of questions.
Is
Is there any background to this notice of motion that's just been emailed to me at 6 minutes to 10? Because I'm assuming that the background that I was given is completely not relevant to this notice of motion. What does endorse the concept of a trial mean? Oh look, there's heaps. Maybe start with those two questions.
Thank you, Councillor. The background is relevant. So this is an alternative to the motion that was submitted. So the background remains relevant. The background does detail what a trial might look like, the trial of the so-called super stop and a pop-up park on Sydney Road. It has significant information about Pick Your Project, which is a new grant category the state has created. And I guess the alternative is that we are saying that doesn't necessarily need to be the vehicle, but this could be achieved through other sources. It could be achieved in a partnership with Revitalise Sydney Road, but also with Vic Roads in the working groups that do occur. So what we are seeking, or what I'm seeking, is to endorse the concept and keep the discussion going. And if officers and all the other stakeholders believe the grant is the appropriate way to go forward, then that can happen. That option's live. If not, then they can have a look at alternatives as well.
Can I just clarify?
Yeah.
So do you mean endorse the concept of applying for a Pick My Project grant?
I thought it was pretty clear. Endorse the concept of creating a temporary pop-up parklet on Sydney Road for a period of a month in January, which will include a temporary super stop. Endorse that concept.
Okay, I'm going to be abstaining from the voting.
Yes, you can, Councillor Bolton. I will have to ask for, just before you do, can I get a motion to extend by half an hour, please?
Yes.
Right, moved by Councillor Abood, seconded by Councillor Martin. Can I put that to the vote? All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Yes, Councillor Bolton.
It's a genuine question because there's not enough information in the motion. So the idea of a accessible tram stop, great, but the idea of a park on Sydney Road means all of the Brunswick streets will be flooded with cars. Like, but it will be like, it won't be like, what's going to happen? Where buses and cars and it'll actually, anyway, so I'm just checking if that's exactly what you're proposing.
No. That is certainly.
All right, keep it under control, councillors, please. Please. All right. All right. Okay. We're in formal debate.
Yes.
All right. Now we're in formal debate. All right. I'll let Councillor Tapanos answer this question.
That is not the correct understanding, Councillor Bolton. That is not what's been proposed. Certainly in applying a transport super stop, which is something that is coming, there are opportunities to create on Sydney Road parklets and green spaces. That is not to say that we are stopping Sydney Road. That is not to say that we are making Sydney Road into a giant park. That is not the intent, and it is certainly not realistic or feasible. So you can get that idea completely out of your mind. What is actually being detailed is to create some green spaces in the corridor as part of this project. Councillors, I do envisage that if this were to go ahead, if we were to be successful in finding a funding source for this, there would be significant consultation with local traders in the community, and concept plans will be coming back to council for future consideration, and all of those matters will be dealt with. But certainly it will not, and the intention is not to inconvenience traffic on Sydney Road or trams on Sydney Road.
Or pedestrians on the
Or
footpath.
pedestrians.
Okay. Right. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, councillors. I, for one, am incredibly disappointed that Councillor Yildiz was not supportive of the park concept. I don't know why he would not be, being one of the most environmental people in the chamber. I do understand what Councillor Tapanos is trying to put forward. I would like to thank the Revitalise Sydney Road group for putting this forward. I do think that the advocacy does sit with Vic Roads, because that is the continual roadblock that we encounter in this situation. And I think it would be even better if Vic Roads were actually willing to run this Pick My Project. It makes such sense, knowing that council is quite supportive of this concept. It does sort of, I do wonder why we have to be involved. It is a Vic Roads road. I do fully support parklets set up with the accessible stops next to them. Don't encourage an entire park across the entire Sydney Road. I think that might be a little bit problematic for people in the area. But I would like to thank Councillor Tapanos, but I do really encourage the Revitalise Sydney Road group to really look to Vic Roads as running this project, because I do feel that it does sit with them, because they are the roadblock, and this, you know, this situation where you're dealing with Public Transport Victoria, Yarra Trams, and Vic Roads, they are all state bodies. It would be really nice to see the state member for Brunswick assist if she is still around. And I think it would be really good to see that project being led at a state level, because they are all state bodies.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'd like
Councillor
a
Boone?
procedural that this motion be put.
Right, so we've got a procedural motion that the motion be put by Councillor Abu. All right, are we now, okay, so we're voting to whether to put the motion or not. So all those in favour that the motion be put, raise your hand. Okay, all those against? Okay, so that's carried, so the motion will be put. So now we move to the actual motion itself, the 2 points that have been moved by Councillor Tapanos and seconded by Councillor Riley after Councillor Yildiz withdrew his seconding. Right, so we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour of the motion? All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the motion is lost.
Can my vote be recorded as abstaining?
Okay,
Because just the tram stopper would have voted for it.
Okay, so we'll probably have to put everyone in, do we? Or we can just put abstaining? Okay, that's fine then. Okay. Councillors, that concludes the notice of motions. Could I have a motion to close the council meeting now to the public? Right. Moved by Councillor Davidson, seconded by Councillor Carly Hannon, and I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. I now declare the council meeting closed to the public. I'd like to thank the gallery attendees for your patience. I also thank those watching on live streaming for your interest in council matters and respectfully request that you kindly leave the council chamber, and I wish you all a good night. And so at 10:06